Chapter 1378. He surpassed it. Lan Yu waved her fist excitedly. Ing Liexiong was stunned at first. He then grinned at Yun Piaomiao. First place is ours. Do you still have any objections? Humph. Yun Piaomiao turned her head and looked depressed. This was too strange. He could even pass it like this. Amazing. Zhan Xiong looked at Kong Xueli in shock. The first demon lord with the bloodline of the great demon king had improved a lot. Last time, he had passed 802 levels, and this time, he had passed 840 levels. This speed of improvement was 10 times faster than theirs. They didn't expect Sword Venerable Yi Chen to improve even faster, surpassing the first demon lord. Kong Xueli shook her head. Don't look at me. I didn't expect him to surpass the first demon lord. Indeed, we don't understand their world. Zhan Xiong shook his head. Surpassed? Evil Star was a little dazed. When he regained his senses, he couldn't help but look at the first demon lord. This was the first time the first demon lord's face changed. It wasn't anger but rather heaviness. Evil Star thought to himself. The first demon lord's heart wasn't heavy, but serious. He was starting to treat Yi Chen seriously. If he didn't treat Yi Chen seriously now, it wouldn't be confidence, but arrogance. The bloodline of the great demon king had never been arrogant, and he wasn't one either. The reason why the bloodline of the great demon king could stand at the peak was because they could maintain absolute calmness and rationality no matter what. This was innate. 842 levels. Yi Chen didn't last long before he was defeated by Huang Ling. He was already exhausted and didn't expect to pass the 842 levels. When he came out and saw Lan Yu's expression, Yi Chen knew that he had reached first again. To be honest, it was impossible for him not to feel anything. To him, the most important thing wasn't to defeat the bloodline of the great demon king, but to prove that he had the potential to reach the peak of the martial path. As for the bloodline of the great demon king, it was just a strong opponent. Their eyes met and sparks could be seen. The first demon lord and Yi Chen didn't say anything. They just looked at each other and retracted their gazes. They understood that the other party was their strongest opponent, so there was no need to say anything. The yin-yang sword art is complete. The unfalling eagle tribe received 3 portions of time, which was 30 years. Yi Chen's contribution was huge, so he was directly given 4 years. In only 2 years, Yi Chen created a perfect yin-yang swordsmanship. This yin-yang swordsmanship had 2 styles. The first style was yin-yang coexistence, and the second style was yin-yang tai chi. The coexistence of yin and yang was very mysterious. Once the sword was unleashed, the sword chi seemed to have a mind of its own. It did not increase or decrease, nor did it dissipate. After locking onto the enemy's aura, it would not disappear unless the enemy was dead. Of course, if the enemy was very strong and could break the coexistence of yin and yang, then that would be another matter. Yin-yang tai chi, this was a sealing sword move. After the black and white sword chi formed a tai chi diagram, it would trap the enemy in the Tai Chi diagram and use the endless sword Chi to obliterate the enemy. The area it covered could be big or small. The creation of the yin-yang sword art didn't directly increase Yi Chen's battle strength. After all, no matter how strong the yin-yang sword art was, it was only at the level of the 5 elements sword art and the spacetime sword art. However, an additional sword art could make Yi Chen more comprehensive. Yin-yang coexistence and yin-yang tai chi also had their own uses. In the 4th year, Yi Chen created the 4 symbols sword art. The 4 symbols sword art contained the 4 profound meanings of earth, water, fire, and wind. It was similar to the 5 elements sword art, but it was more tyrannical. The 4 symbols sword art also had 2 styles. The first was the 4 symbols hegemon sword art, which was derived from the hegemon sword art. The second was the 4 extremes of heaven and earth. The difference between the 4 symbols hegemon sword art and the hegemon sword art was that the 4 symbols hegemon sword art had a wide attack range. The sword aura would transform into the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise, while the hegemon sword art condensed the sword energy into a single line. It was an extreme attack. However, if the opponent was fast enough to dodge, it wouldn't be restricted by the hegemon sword art. The second move, Heaven and Earth 4 Extremes, was a passive attack. Using this move didn't require the use of treasured swords. What was required was the heart sword. Using the heart sword to condense the four symbols' sword energy and hide it on the surface of the body. Once the enemy attacked, the four symbols' sword energy would be activated to counterattack the enemy. At the crucial moment, it could also save the user from danger. Finally, the only sword arts that Yi Chen didn't know were the life and death sword art and the light and darkness sword art. In the 4 years, Yi Chen created 2 sword arts. Next, he planned to comprehend the word time and raise the profound of time to the great success realm, or even the perfection realm. After all, the profound of time was the second most profound after the profound of power. In terms of difficulty, it was much more difficult to comprehend than the profound of power. It was the most difficult profound to comprehend. Even though Yi Chen had become a legendary supreme, it wasn't easy for him to comprehend the profound of time to the great success realm. Figuratively speaking, the profound of power was like a person's strength, while the profound of time was like a person's lifespan. It was useless if one only had strength and died early. It was also useless if one only had lifespan without strength. There were many records about the great success realm of time. For example, one's lifespan could reach an unimaginable level, or one could control the flow of time in an area. Of course, this speed of time couldn't be as fast as the Tower of Time in the Paradise of Gods. It was already amazing to be able to speed up or slow down time by a few times. In the Tower of Time, it could be 10 or even 100 times faster. This wasn't something that humans could do. Only true gods could do. 96%, 97%, 98%. After spending 20 years, Yi Chen raised the profound of time to 98%. He was only one step away from the great success realm. At that time, there would be a qualitative leap. In the blink of an eye, 30 years had passed. The profound of time had finally reached the great success realm. The moment he exited the strange space, Yi Chen felt as if he could see the flow of time. He could see the trajectory of time. He could even feel his own lifespan. He felt that he could live for about 4 million years. He was only 1 million years away from the limit of legendary supremes. Is this the profound of time? So magical. The great success realm of power allowed Yi Chen to feel the essence of power. The profound of time also allowed Yi Chen to feel the essence of time. Of course, there was still a long way to go before he understood the essence. Have I reached the limit? After the profound of time reached the great success realm, Yi Chen found that he couldn't concentrate on comprehending the word time. It was very hard for him to understand. Could it be that the great success realm was a forbidden area that no one was allowed to enter? Your profound of time reached the great success realm? Ing Liexiong looked surprised. Yes. Yi Chen and Ing Liexiong would occasionally talk. This time, Yi Chen asked his question. Who knew that Ing Liexiong would be surprised that his profound of time reached the great success realm? I'm so envious. Ing Liexiong sighed and said, comprehending the profound of time requires talent. If you don't have enough talent, even if a demigod personally teaches you, you won't be able to comprehend the profound of time to a very high level. Otherwise, the word time has been in my unfalling eagle tribe for so many years. There wouldn't be no supremes who reached the great success realm. Chapter 1379. Yi Chen faintly nodded. Comprehending the time profound indeed required aptitude. The majority of supremes only comprehended 20 to 30% of the time profound. It was not that they didn't want to improve it, but they were truly limited by their aptitude. Even if they were given the word of time, they would only be able to improve 10 to 20% at most. Ing Liexiong continued, as for what you said, I know a thing or two. If I'm not wrong, you don't have enough experience and can't handle the time profound. Don't have enough experience and can't handle the time profound? Yi Chun thought about it and didn't understand. Let me put it this way. Do you feel that your lifespan has greatly increased and is close to the limit of legendary supremes? Yes. Yi Chun answered. That's right. Comprehending time profound is different from comprehending other profound. It brings great changes to the body, especially to lifespan. Therefore, you need to get used to the time profound at this stage. Only after you get used to it can you continue comprehending time profound. It's like a person who suddenly has 100 times more power. If you can't control it, you'll be tired. Ing Liexiong explained. I see. Yi Chen finally understood. He had comprehended time profound to the great completion realm in such a short time. It was too fast. His perception of time and the universe's time were already a little out of sync. Not to mention that he couldn't continue comprehending time profound, even if he forcefully comprehended it to the great completion realm, it would probably cause a series of backlashes, such as a chaotic sense of time. A chaotic sense of time was an extremely terrifying thing. In a battle, a single moment could be fatal. After understanding the reason why time profound couldn't be improved, Yi Chen no longer hesitated. He started to create the third move of the spacetime sword art. Although the first two moves had been perfected and there was nothing that could be changed, in Yi Chen's opinion, these two moves weren't enough to display the power of time profound. Less than 1,000 miles away from the place where Yi Chen and the Iron Star Snake had fought, a ripple spread out. It was like a calm lake suddenly being blown by the wind. The next moment, two black dots appeared from the ripple and became bigger and bigger. Finally, they turned into two figures. One was wearing a black robe and the other was wearing a gray robe. They looked extremely miserable, as if they had been chased by something. Their faces were red and their clothes were tattered. Damned Gemini Tyrannosaurus, why did I encounter it? The black-robed old man's face was gloomy. The desolate god's secret realm is incomparably terrifying. It's already not easy for us to come out alive. It's a pity that we didn't find the transmission array. The gray-robed elder reached out and wiped his tattered gray clothes. Teleportation array? I suspect that the desolate god's secret realm doesn't even have a teleportation array. Do you think that those 5 fellows are lying to us? They can't wait for us to leave, causing us to be trapped in the desolate god's secret realm for hundreds of thousands of years. Our starry sky bear dog kings also died in the desolate god's secret realm. Without them, our restrictions on those 5 fellows would be much weaker, the black-robed elder said suspiciously. The gray-robed elder's face turned cold. I hope they didn't lie to us. Last time, we were able to destroy 2 rank 8 tribes. This time we can do it again. I haven't been out for more than 100,000 years. I wonder if the Wild's God continent has changed. The black-robed old man's eyes were filled with killing intent. The two of them did not travel together. Instead, they went their separate ways. The black-robed elder flew towards the Yunzhong tribe, while the gray-robed elder flew towards the Xinghai tribe. In the Yunzhong tribe, Yun Piaomiao was drinking tea in the pavilion. Opposite him sat his daughter and son-in-law. They had been married for tens of thousands of years. He did not know when they would give birth to a grandson. Looking at the courtyard where the first demon venerable was, Yun Piaomiao sighed. It would be great if his descendants were half as outstanding as the first demon venerable. And suddenly, Yun Piaomiao's expression changed. His daughter and son-in-law had never seen Yun Piaomiao with such an expression. They saw fear and dread on his face. Father, what happened? Yun Piaomiao's daughter could not help but ask. I didn't expect them to not be able to leave the Wild's God continent. Instead, they came out of the desolate god's secret realm. Yun Piaomiao muttered to himself as if he did not hear his daughter's question. Yun Piaomiao, there are too many things that you didn't expect. A black-robed elder appeared outside the Yunzhong tribe's array. His gaze could actually penetrate the layers of array and see Yun Piaomiao's mouth. Yun Piaomiao hesitated for a moment. He waved his hand and the array opened, allowing the black-robed elder to enter. I haven't seen you for hundreds of thousands of years. At least you haven't lost your head yet. The black-robed elder's figure flashed and appeared in the pavilion. He looked at Yun Piaomiao's daughter and son-in-law. This should be your daughter. She looks pretty good. I remember that when I left, you didn't even have a child. Welcome, Supremacy. Yun Piaomiao's next action made his daughter and son-in-law turn pale with fright. Who was it that the leader had to welcome? Wasn't the Wild's God continent controlled by the leaders of the 5 major tribes? Hurry up and welcome the Supremacy. Yun Piaomiao quickly gave the two of them a look. Welcome, Supremacy. Although the two of them did not know when a Supremacy had appeared in the Yunzhong tribe, how could they not know that the black-robed elder's status was even higher than Yun Piaomiao's when they saw Yun Piaomiao's expression? I have something to say to the Supremacy. The two of you can leave first. Yun Piaomiao ordered his daughter and son-in-law to leave. Yes. The two of them did not dare to stay any longer and quickly left the pavilion. Supremacy, please have some tea. Yun Piaomiao poured a cup of tea for the black-robed elder. The black-robed elder picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp. Yun Piaomiao, I haven't seen you for hundreds of thousands of years, but your aura has become much stronger. Let me ask you, suddenly, a strange expression flashed across the black-robed elder's face. Shua, his figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in the courtyard of the first demon Venerable. Who is it? The first demon Venerable walked out of the room. When he saw the black-robed elder, the first demon Venerable's expression changed slightly. He could feel the surging demonic power from the other's body. That kind of aura was much stronger than that of the leaders of the 5 major tribes. The aura of darkness. The black-robed elder's eyes lit up like light bulbs. That's right. Only the bloodline of the great demons can have the aura of darkness. It is so dense. Haha, I am Sea Demon Venerable, and I come from the Demon's God continent. When did you come to the Wild's God continent? Did you come here through the mark I left behind? Yes. Even when facing Empyrean Sea Fiend, who was much stronger than him, the first demon lord still maintained the same appearance. His bloodline was supreme, and in the demon race, he was the future ruler. He didn't need to bow down, even when facing Empyrean Sea Fiend. Sea Demon Venerable frowned slightly, but he soon relaxed. The bloodline of the great demons was indeed like this. If it were any other demon genius, he would have already taught them a lesson. Chapter 1380. With his time profound reaching greater completion, Yi Chen's spacetime sword arts had thoroughly surpassed 5 elements sword arts, yin-yang sword arts, and 4 symbols sword arts. Moreover, it wasn't just by a little bit. It was already not inferior to supreme sword arts. If he could truly create the third style, his battle power would make a huge leap. The third move's concept was simple. It was black hole. Although Super Supremes could create small black holes, compared to those crude black holes, Yi Chen's was much more difficult. After all, Yi Chen had the support of spacetime ultimacy. How could he not make use of this advantage? On the prairie, Yi Chen and Ing Liexiong were in an intense battle. Ing Liexiong didn't use Sky Blast Hammer, and Yi Chen didn't use Sky Sword either. The two of them fought with ordinary supreme weapons. It could be seen that even if Ing Liexiong wasn't serious, he still had the upper hand. The domineering hammer technique looked simple and direct, but it was able to defeat Yi Chen's sword technique every time, causing Yi Chen to be shaken. This is a newly created spacetime sword technique, Black Hole Stance. Yi Chen executed the embryonic third move of spacetime sword technique, Black Hole Stance. The supreme sword trembled, and 3 black dots appeared in front of Yi Chen. The 3 black dots looked tiny, but they emitted a shocking gravitational force. They enveloped Ing Liexiong in a triangular formation. They weren't fast or slow as they contained spacetime ultimacy. Good move. The three gravitational forces stacked together, causing Ing Liexiong to be unable to swing his hammer. The desolation essence in his body was like a raging flood that was about to be released. Rumble! After forcefully defeating the three black dots, Ing Liexiong flew out in a pathetic manner. As expected of the space-time sword technique, I nearly suffered. Ing Liexiong decided that the next time he saw Yi Chen execute this move, he had to use 10 times his strength, or he wouldn't be able to suppress this move. Are you saying that the bloodline of the great demon king has appeared? And there's also a peerless genius of the human race? In the Star Ocean tribe, the gray-robed old man looked at Evil Star in shock. Evil Star nodded heavily. The great demon king's bloodline is more terrifying than I imagined. In time, he will definitely become a demigod and rule the world. The only one who can contend against him is that peerless genius of the human race. Therefore, I feel that the evil spirit race has no need to help the demons. Let them deal with the peerless genius of the human race themselves. Although Evil Star had submitted to the first demon Venerable, it didn't mean that he didn't have other thoughts. In his opinion, it wasn't a good thing to be the sole ruler. If the first demon Venerable continued to grow like this, no one would be able to stop him. At that time, let alone the Human Race Alliance, even the Demons Alliance would become slaves of the demons. At most, they would be slaves of a slightly higher level. Therefore, he felt that Yi Chen's existence was very necessary. After all, this was different from the past. In the past, such a terrifying figure had never appeared. The war between the Demons Alliance and the Human Race Alliance would last forever, so the evil spirit race naturally didn't need to worry about destroying the Human Race Alliance. What you said makes sense, but we still have to put on a show. Otherwise, we won't be able to explain to Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend. The gray-robed old man was the legendary supremacy of the evil spirit race, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light. His strength was comparable to Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend's. Although he wasn't afraid of Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend, he didn't want to fall out with the demons. That wouldn't be a good thing for the evil spirit race. Moreover, he and Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend both suspected that a supremacy of the Human Race Alliance had also come to the Wild's God continent. He didn't know if they had left, but he had to be on guard. By the way, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light, how did you come to the Wild's God continent? Heavenly Venerable Evil Light was a legendary supremacy. If he hadn't come to the Wild's God continent, the evil spirit race would have dominated the universe. As if he could read Evil Star's thoughts, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light shook his head and said, "Things are more complicated than you think. Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend and I came to the Wild's God continent a long time ago. As for why we came here, you will find out in the future. All these years, we have been looking for a way to leave the Wild's God continent, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to. The Wild's God mystic realm is too dangerous for us, and it's also a little too strange." You can leave the Wild's God mystic realm? It wasn't that Evil Star hadn't thought of leaving, but he couldn't stay in the Wild's God continent forever. There is only one way for the desolate race to leave the Wild's God continent, and that is to pass through the Wild's God Tower. There are two ways for us outsiders to leave the Wild's God continent. One is to pass through the Wild's God Tower, and the other is to leave through the teleportation array in the Wild's God mystic realm. The first method is too ridiculous, and even if we can pass it, we don't know where we will end up. The Wild's God left the Wild's God Tower behind, not just to let the desolate race leave the Wild's God continent, so there is only the second method. Have you found the teleportation array? Evil Star asked. Empyrean Evil Light's face sank. In the Wild's God mystic realm, fierce beasts run rampant. Even with my and Empyrean Sea Fiend's strength, we still have to be careful. It's still unknown if there is a teleportation array or not. 1, 2, 5 black dots appeared, and a large amount of soil was suddenly pulled up. Under the combined effect of the 5 black dots, the soil turned into powder in the air, and then turned into 5 streams that were sucked into the black dot. Compared to the last time he sparred with Lieshiong, Yi Chen's black hole stance was even stronger. The number of black holes had increased from 3 to 5, and they maintained an absolute balance without destroying each other. The third stance, black hole stance, is complete. Slowly letting out a breath of turbid air, Yi Chen's eyes returned to normal. Previously, his eyes were like black holes, and this was a change brought about by using the black hole stance. This black hole stance isn't considered weak among the supreme martial art. Now, the difference between me and the leaders of the 5 tribes is only the difference in martial Dao Yuan soul. Some silver martial Dao Yuan souls were strong and some were weak. Yi Chen was only at the early silver stage. The first demon Venerable, Evil Star, Kong Xueli, and War Bear were also at this level. HM? Yi Chen abruptly looked toward the west. He could feel a powerful demonic power pervading the air. If it isn't the first demon Venerable, who is it? Due to the distance, Yi Chen couldn't see the other party. Found him. Empyrean Sea Fiend discovered Yi Chen. His figure flashed and his speed soared. After a few flashes, he was less than 1,000 miles away from Yi Chen. Yi Chen stood there quietly, and Heaven Splitter, who was next to him, had his hair stand on end. Swish! A black light flashed, and Empyrean Sea Fiend landed on the grassland opposite Yi Chen. "You are Sword Venerable Yi Chen?" Empyrean Sea Fiend asked. "Yes, and who are you?" Yi Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. He could feel the killing intent from the other party. The reason he stayed here and didn't run away was because he was very confident in his spacetime profound meaning. As long as he wanted to run, unless the other party was a quasi-demigod, there was absolutely no way they could catch up to him. "I'll give you 2 choices. One is to obediently surrender, and the other is to be killed by me." Empyrean Sea Fiend sized up Yi Chen and said indifferently, "I don't choose either. Heaven Splitter, let's go." Jumping onto Heaven Splitter's back, Yi Chen waved his hand. Spacetime instantly distorted, wrapping around Heaven Splitter and disappearing without a trace. When they reappeared, they were already 1,000 miles away. Large success in spacetime profound meaning? Empyrean Sea Fiend's face was extremely gloomy. Whoosh! Almost the moment Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter disappeared, he chased after them. His aura had already locked onto Yi Chen. Chapter 1381. The two chased, one fleeing, and soon, they were 100,000 miles away. A peerless genius of the human race only knows how to run? Empyrean Sea Fiend couldn't help but mock as he saw Yi Chen's figure getting further and further away. "If I were a quasi-demigod, you would be the one running." Empyrean Sea Fiend was very strong, stronger than the 5 great tribe leaders. Yi Chen only felt a dangerous aura similar to Empyrean Sea Fiend's from the gold-eating beast. It was clear that even if Empyrean Sea Fiend wasn't as strong as the gold-eating beast, he was at least an existence close to it. The gold-eating beast was a peak legend rank supreme, and even the 5 great tribe leaders could only contend with it. "You're very stubborn. Let's see if you can keep being so stubborn when I catch you." Empyrean Sea Fiend released his Sea Fiend domain while chasing Yi Chen. The Sea Fiend domain was vast and mighty, sweeping towards Yi Chen like a vast sea. Within the domain, there were even countless Empyrean Sea Fiend phantoms faintly visible. Sea Fiend domain, a 9th domain. Yi Chen's scalp went numb. He felt that once he was enveloped by the other party's domain, there would be no way out. The 9th domain wasn't an ordinary domain. This level of domain could even kill a low-level legend rank supreme. Although a mid-level legend rank supreme and a high-level legend rank supreme could barely contend with it, their combat strength would be greatly reduced. Activating the spacetime profound, the space where Yi Chen and Sky Splitter were, was violently distorted. They suddenly appeared thousands of miles away, narrowly escaping the Sea Fiend domain. Hateful spacetime profound. Empyrean Sea Fiend hated the spacetime profound. This kind of profound was absolutely top-notch when it came to escaping. Unless he could trap the other party, he could only slowly chase. Sea Fiend Heaven Torrential Seal. Taking a deep breath, Empyrean Sea Fiend increased his speed. At the same time, he raised his right hand, and black light flickered as he slammed his palm towards the distant Yi Chen. Rumble. Like a landslide, like an earthquake, like a tsunami, like a flood, the violent palm energy rushed towards Yi Chen. Along the way, the flood transformed into a giant seal that shot out. Danger! For a moment, Yi Chen felt his blood flow in reverse and his head felt heavy. The seal behind him seemed to be very far away from him, but the pressure it brought with it was inconceivably great. The space and time he was in seemed to have been locked down by it. Once the seal landed, he and the entire space and time would be flattened and crushed. Such a domineering supreme martial art. Yi Chen had seen Ing Liexiong's reopening heaven and earth, Tai Tan's cleaving the heavens and splitting the earth, Chen Tianding's shattering stars, and Yun Piaomiao's apocalyptic lightning punishment. The first four might not be weaker than this move in terms of profoundness, but in terms of battle prowess, the person who used the first four moves was still much weaker than their opponent. Fortunately, my spacetime ultimacy has reached the large success stage. Relying on the space and time power, Yi Chen avoided the attack range of the seal. The distance between the two was very far, and the seal would take some time to reach Yi Chen. If Yi Chen couldn't dodge it, he might as well hang his neck and die. Empyrean Sea Fiend's demonic power surged like a vast ocean. He didn't care about the loss of demonic power as he crazily chased after Yi Chen. Sometimes it was a seal, sometimes it was a black water dragon, and sometimes it was countless black rope. Unfortunately, with his space and time power, Yi Chen was billions of times more slippery than a mudfish. No matter how Empyrean Sea Fiend roared, he couldn't do anything to him. Do you only know how to run? Empyrean Sea Fiend was used to acting like a tyrant on the desolate god continent. After entering the desolate god's secret territory for more than 100,000 years, and after coming out, he was teased by Yi Chen. His murderous intent surged, and he hated that he couldn't tear Yi Chen into pieces to relieve the hatred in his heart. Yi Chen didn't care about Empyrean Sea Fiend. He was just thinking about what to do next. He couldn't keep running. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't come up with an answer. Looking back at Empyrean Sea Fiend, Yi Chen frowned. I don't know where this old guy came from. Could it be the desolate god's secret territory? Isn't it said that only those who enter the desolate god's secret territory cannot leave? Or maybe it's just a rumor, not true. With my current strength, I can't compete with a peak legendary supreme unless my sword intent and sword domain reach the highest realm. The leaders of the 5 major tribes were all peak legendary supreme. The reason they had their current strength was mainly because their martial yuan spirits were strong enough. According to Yi Chen's guess, their martial yuan spirits were at the late silver realm. However, for geniuses, martial yuan spirits were the most difficult to improve, because it required accumulation and couldn't be achieved overnight. Thus, if Yi Chen wanted to make up for the shortcomings of his martial yuan spirit, he could only do so if his sword intent and sword domain reached the highest realm. Although my sword intent can improve every day, I don't know when it will end. There is some hope for sword domain. Sword intent was the purest and couldn't tolerate any impurities. Sword domain was a person's achievement in sword Dao, which was directly related to the swordsman's cultivation method. If Yi Chen's Green Lotus sword spell could break through from supreme to legendary, his sword domain would have a great chance of breaking through to the 9th realm. At that time, he would really soar into the sky. Unknowingly, the two had arrived near the desolate god's secret territory. This kid is too hard to deal with. I can't catch him in a short time. It's better to send him into the desolate god's secret territory. With his strength, he won't survive more than a year in there. A thought flashed in Empyrean Sea Fiend's mind. Putting his thoughts into action, Empyrean Sea Fiend began to operate a very rare supreme secret technique. After 10 breaths, a triangular star suddenly appeared, with Empyrean Sea Fiend at one corner. The triangular star grew bigger and bigger, and Yi Chen couldn't dodge it with his space-time profound several times. This triangular star wasn't an offensive secret technique, so there was no way to escape. Finally, Yi Chen was covered by the triangular star, and the last corner was inside the desolate god's secret territory. 3-star position. Empyrean Sea Fiend roared, his surging demonic power pouring into the triangular star. Whoosh! Empyrean Sea Fiend's figure moved along the triangular star, quickly moving towards Yi Chen's corner, while Yi Chen moved along the triangular star, moving towards the corner inside the desolate god's secret territory. Not good! Yi Chen was shocked. He had never seen such a strange secret technique that could forcibly change the position of others. Open for me! Yi Chen erupted with everything he could, but it didn't even create a splash. If the triangular star's energy was a surging river, then Yi Chen was just an ordinary fish, unable to swim against the current or jump out of the river. Bo! In the end, Yi Chen entered the desolate god's secret territory, and after Yi Chen reached the other corner, the triangular star quickly disappeared. Although this wasn't an offensive secret technique, it still caused the barrier of the desolate god's secret territory to fluctuate a few times, and a trace of the fluctuation followed the triangular star and hit Empyrean Sea Fiend. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Empyrean Sea Fiend's face turned pale. The desolate god's will was too overbearing. 3-star position wasn't an offensive secret technique, so it stood to reason that it shouldn't have caused fluctuations in the barrier of the desolate god's secret territory. It was just like entering the desolate god's secret territory wouldn't have any effect, but it still hit Empyrean Sea Fiend. Chapter 1382. Entering the desolate god's secret territory means certain death. So what if you're a genius? As long as you haven't matured, you're still a weakling. Empyrean Sea Devil sneered and turned to leave. In his heart, Yi Chen was already a dead man. Back then, he and Empyrean Evil Light were able to come out alive because they were both peak legend rank supremes. In addition, they also had 2 high-level legend rank Starry Sky Bear Dog Kings. Even so, the two had lived miserable lives for more than 100,000 years. Even the Starry Sky Bear Dog Kings had been killed one by one. Whoosh! Empyrean Sea Devil disappeared without a trace. Outside, what Yi Chen saw was a lush green forest. But after entering the desolate god's secret territory, Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter appeared in the sky above a desert. Heaven Splitter, be careful. At this time, Yi Chen could only rely on Heaven Splitter's hearing and smell. The desolate god continent's laws were unique. The most primitive senses were the most useful. The effect of soul force was far inferior. Heaven Splitter didn't make a sound. He nodded his huge head. The desolate god's secret territory gave him a huge pressure. He was afraid that his roar would attract some terrifying vicious beast. What the two didn't know was that in the depths of the desert, a black furry thing was quietly climbing up. The quicksand on both sides was like flowing water and didn't pose much of an obstacle. Heaven Splitter shook his tail in annoyance. He could faintly feel danger approaching, but he couldn't clearly determine where it was coming from. Just as Heaven Splitter was getting more and more annoyed, a big bump suddenly appeared on the surface of the desert not far away. A gray fountain rushed out from the top of the bump. The fountain was powerful, but upon closer inspection, it wasn't a fountain at all. It was clearly sticky gray spider silk. Although Yi Chen's hearing and smell weren't as good as Heaven Splitter's, his reaction speed was far higher. With a wave of his hand, space-time distorted, and Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter disappeared from their original positions. The gray spider silk missed its target and fell to the ground. It stuck to the desert surface and emitted a corrosive sound. The moment Yi Chen and Sky Splitter disappeared, a black shadow chased after them along the surface of the desert. It had 8 limbs and a chubby, furry body covered in grayish-black stripe. It was clearly a spider beast. Its body was 20 meters wide and had 64 compound eyes. Each compound eye was like a crystal with many facets. One of the facets showed where Yi Chun and Sky Splitter had appeared. So fast. Yi Chun looked back and was a little surprised. The spider beast's 8 limbs didn't land on the ground at the same time, but one by one. It looked like it was flying close to the surface of the desert. Every time one of its limbs landed on the ground, a large hole would appear in the desert below. Shock waves would spread out, causing its speed to reach an unimaginable level. It was probably several times faster than its flying speed. In just a few breaths, the spider beast had caught up. Chaotic stance. Yi Chun jumped up from Sky Splitter's back, unsheathed the heavenly sword, and used the chaotic stance. The current spacetime sword art was equivalent to a supreme sword art, 100 times stronger than the 5 elements sword art. The moment the chaotic stance was used, spacetime became distorted. It was like countless pieces of glass interweaved together and enveloped the spider beast. Clang, 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 clang. The hairs on the spider beast's body stood up and emitted a fine light. The crisscrossing sword light slashed on it, but it could only cut off a large amount of the hairs. Moreover, the remaining sword light couldn't even break the spider beast's skin. In terms of defense, the spider beast could definitely resist the attacks of high-level legendary supremes. It opened its mouth and shot a spider silk at Yi Chun. There were only 2 places on its body that could shoot spider silk. One was its tail and the other was its mouth. The spider silk shot out from its tail was very thick and viscous, used to bind the enemy. There was only one spider silk shot out from its mouth, but its penetrative power was very strong and its speed was much faster. It could be used to attack the enemy. Yi Chun wanted to test the spider beast's strength, so he slashed with his sword. The spider silk seemed to have a mind of its own as it entangled Yi Chun's sky sword. As the spider beast retracted its silk, Yi Chun felt that sky sword was about to fly out of his hand. Break! His right wrist that was holding sky sword shook, and the destructive sword chi surged, breaking the spider silk inch by inch. The sky sword was a 9-star Earth Saint artifact, and contained a powerful might in itself. The spider beast wanted to entangle the sky sword with its silk, but it was naturally unable to do so. In close combat, the sky sword's offensive power was even more powerful than his own. The desolate god's secret domain is full of dangers. Sky Splitter's strength is still too low. If I kill this spider beast and let Sky Splitter devour it, it should be able to step into the mid-level legendary beast rank. The stronger Sky Splitter was, the more help it would be to Yi Chun. Yi Chun needed its sense of smell, hearing, and acute danger perception. With this thought in mind, Yi Chun took a deep breath and flew towards the spider beast. Illusion sword form. A circle of sword light bubble expanded and enveloped the spider beast. Immediately, it fell into an illusion. Although it wouldn't stay in the illusion for long, 1 or 2 seconds would already be amazing. However, it would at least buy some time for Yi Chun. Sure enough, after 2 moments, the spider-ferocious beast broke free from the illusion. However, before it could do anything after waking up, a sword pierced through its head. Ashes scattered all over the sky. Spacetime Sword Technique's second move, Sword Burial. This move's ferocity was not even comparable to the black hole stance. It was a pure killing sword move. Green juice splattered everywhere as the spider beast struggled violently. Its front 4 limbs were like sharp blades, stabbing towards Yi Chun, creating a tearing sound. Yi Chun wasn't greedy. This beast's vitality far surpassed that of a supreme being. This sword strike had only slightly injured it, and this was also due to the sharpness of the heavenly sword. Otherwise, Yi Chun wouldn't have been confident in piercing through the spider beast's head. Withdrawing and floating backwards, Yi Chun avoided the spider beast's limbs. At the same time, the third form of the spacetime sword art, black hole form, was ready. He was just waiting for the spider beast to crash into him. The spider beast was thoroughly enraged by Yi Chen. Relying on its huge body and tyrannical vitality, its 8 limbs quickly swept across the ground as it rushed towards Yi Chen. Yi Chen's expression was grave as he instantly executed the black hole form. In an instant, 5 rotating black spots appeared in front of him. As the black spots appeared, a terrifying gravitational force burst forth and superimposed on each other. By the time the spider beast realized something was wrong, it was already too late. Its huge body was directly sucked in by the 5 black spots. Due to its inconceivably powerful defense and terrifying vitality, the 5 black spots were unable to tear it apart at once, even though they were constantly devouring its body. Its flesh and blood were only reduced piece by piece, and the spider beast's vitality was also rapidly fading. What a pity! Yi Chen's eyes flashed with infinite pity. Just now, Sky Splitter had told him that a group of beasts was rushing over from all directions. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't be able to. Chapter 1383. Sky Splitter, let's go. Not caring about the spider beast that was about to be killed, Yi Chen mounted Sky Splitter and prepared to break out of the encirclement. In just a blink of an eye, he could already see the beasts surrounding him. It was a huge pack of huge wolf beasts. They were called huge wolf beasts because they looked very similar to wolves. Of course, beasts were beasts after all, and they could not look exactly like wolves. These huge wolf beasts had 6 legs and a huge head. Correspondingly, their teeth were huge as well. It's actually an iron fang. Yi Chen was startled. The iron fang beast was a novice legendary fierce beast. A single iron fang beast wasn't scary at all. It was many times weaker than any novice legendary fierce beast, and even a pinnacle super fierce beast could contend with it. This was mainly because the iron fang beast's attack method was very simple, and the only threatening thing was its bite. However, once the iron fang beast formed a large group, it would be a real disaster. With its terrifying bite force, the iron fang beast could even bite through the defense of a high-level legendary fierce beast. Even a pinnacle legendary fierce beast wouldn't dare to ignore the bite of the iron fang beast. Only a pinnacle legendary fierce beast like the gold-eating beast with an extremely abnormal defense wouldn't be afraid of being surrounded by the iron fang beast. A large number of iron fang surrounded them. At a glance, there were at least 500 of them. Seeing so many iron fang beasts, the heavily injured spider beast no longer dared to act like a superior. It dived its head down and immediately dove into the desert. Unfortunately, the iron fang beasts were extremely cunning and wouldn't make a useless encirclement. Dozens of iron fang beasts that dove into the desert forced the spider beast out. What followed next was the scene of the spider ferocious beasts fighting the group of iron-toothed beasts. Although the spider ferocious beasts had suffered heavy injuries and their strength had dropped a lot, they were still high-grade legendary rank ferocious beasts. Every time the spider silk on their tails shot out, 4 or 5 iron-toothed beasts would be stuck. The corrosive power of the spider silk easily corroded the iron-toothed beasts into a sour and stinky liquid. In just a short while, 60 to 70 iron-toothed beasts had died under the spider silk. Of course, the spider beast didn't have it easy either. Its huge body had completely become a target for the iron fang beast. It was bitten until it was covered in blood and flesh. Its life force was getting weaker and weaker. By the time Yi Chen and Sky Splitter had escaped the encirclement, the spider beasts had been devoured by the iron-toothed beasts. The desolate god's secret realm is too savage. Without sufficient strength, it's hard to move an inch here. Seeing the spider ferocious beast being divided and eaten by the iron fang beasts, Yi Chen felt very emotional. That was a high-level legendary ferocious beast, yet it was killed by a group of iron fang beasts just like that. At this moment, how could he not understand that if he wanted to survive in the desolate god's secret realm, he would either need absolute strength or sufficient numbers. Without both, he could only rely on luck. During the 10 years in the desolate god's secret realm, Yi Chen had encountered more than 10 dangers. The most dangerous one was when he was chased by a peak legendary ferocious beast. That peak legendary ferocious beast had the time and space profound bloodline. It had chased Yi Chen for a whole month, almost pushing Yi Chen into a desperate situation. Fortunately, Yi Chen's luck had always been very strong. When his life was in danger, he hid in a cave. The cave was very narrow and very deep. This peak legendary ferocious beast couldn't enter at all. Just like this, Yi Chen stayed in the cave for a whole 5 years. Fortunately, he had raised a large number of ferocious beasts in the 5 elements space. Otherwise, he would have starved to death. Sky Splitter, I don't know if we can get out of here alive. Yi Chen finally understood the dangers of the desolate god's secret realm. It was simply not a life for humans. After only 15 years, he felt tired. If it was 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years, he didn't have the confidence to survive. Sometimes, confidence and strength were equal. Without sufficient strength, how could one have enough confidence? Sky Splitter rubbed his head against Yi Chen's body. All these years, Yi Chen had always been protecting him. He also wanted to protect Yi Chen once, but his strength was too low. No matter, let's take one step at a time. Even if we face a desperate situation, we can't give up. Yi Chen said to himself. Unfalling Eagle Tribe. Ing Liexiong was a little annoyed. The return of Celestial Master Sea Fiend and Celestial Master Evil Light was not a good thing for the 5 tribes. Originally, these two wanted to leave the desolate god continent, so they didn't care much about power, nor did they plan to combine the 5 tribes into one and form a 9th-rank tribe. But this time, the two had obviously given up on the idea of leaving the desolate god continent and wanted to control the 5 tribes in one fell swoop. Fortunately, the leaders of the 5 tribes all had heavenly saint weapons. Although the two were strong, they didn't dare to be too oppressive for a while. After all, the two did not have absolute confidence in suppressing the leaders of the 5 tribes. But this was only temporary. Once the two ran out of patience, they would definitely bare their fangs and fight. Are the future of the desolate race going to be handed over to them? Ing Liexiong was very unwilling. Similarly, the leaders of the other 4 tribes were also unwilling. The 5 of them often contacted each other secretly. Desolate God's secret realm. Yi Chen had spent 50 years in there. He had been annoyed at the beginning, but now he was calm. He knew that annoyance was useless. The desolate god mystic realm was very big. Yi Chen didn't know where he was, or where he had arrived. He was completely relying on his intuition to hurry and wander around. Fortunately, in these 50 years, Sky Splitter had become a mid-level legendary fierce beast and had some strength. On this day, Yi Chen came to a valley. They thought that there were fierce beasts in the valley, but once they entered, Yi Chen and Sky Splitter immediately felt that something was wrong. The entire valley gave off a quiet feeling. Looking back, the valley entrance had disappeared, replaced by a thick fog. They couldn't see the path they had come from. There was no other way. The man and beast continued moving forward, gradually going deeper into the valley. And the fog behind them was also spreading. It seemed that with every step they took, the fog would spread a little more. Yi Chen didn't dare to be careless. He placed his right hand on the hilt of the heavenly sword. "Welcome to my world." Suddenly, a voice came. Yi Chen and Sky Splitter looked around, but they couldn't find where the voice came from. It seemed that the voice should have come from here. "Who is it?" Yi Chen said loudly. "Wrong, I'm not human. I'm just a desolate spirit created by Lord Desolate God." In front of Yi Chen, a white light flashed and a human-shaped rabbit appeared. So fast. Yi Chen squinted his eyes. He couldn't sense any power from the human-shaped rabbit, but its speed made him know that it was extremely dangerous. It was definitely not weaker than the baboon fierce beast, Tifula. "This is your world?" Yi Chen didn't know what it was planning, so he tried to communicate with it. That's right. A golden carrot appeared in the human-shaped rabbit's hand. It took a bite and said, "Since you have come to my world, you have to accept my test. If not, you will die." Chapter 1384. What is the test? Yi Chen didn't need to guess to know that the test would be very dangerous. However, he had no other choice. Defeat my 7 brothers. The humanoid rabbit waved its hand, and 7 humanoid rabbits appeared in front of it. These 7 humanoid rabbits weren't exactly the same. Some were extremely muscular, some were extremely slender, some were extremely short, and some were chubby. The first humanoid rabbit had a more balanced body, and of course, it looked the most dangerous of them all. The humanoid rabbit continued, "My 7 brothers have the same foundation as you. You start the challenge from little 8. If you fail within a year, you will be killed, and so on. Challenge little 7, you have 2 years. Challenge little 6, 4 years. Challenge little 5, 8 years. As for your pet, lend it to me to play with for a while. If you can survive, I will return it to you." The humanoid rabbit waved his hand, and Sky Splitter uncontrollably ran over. Riding on Sky Splitter's back, the humanoid rabbit disappeared into the fog. "Brothers, take good care of him." In the following days, Yi Chen was inexplicably subjected to the test. 80 was the strongest humanoid rabbit. It was more than 2 meters tall, and its arms were even thicker than Yi Chen's thighs. The muscles all over its body were intertwined. From its body, Yi Chen could sense the purest violence, even purer than the beast. "I have 1 year to challenge him. Let's see how strong he is first." With this in mind, Yi Chen stepped forward to challenge little 8. As for the other 6 humanoid rabbits, they had already disappeared into the fog after their boss left. "Come, let me see how strong you are." Little 8 waved his hand, his eyes filled with provocation. "Please advise me." Yi Chen unsheathed Heaven's sword and unleashed a chaotic stance. As this sword was unleashed, the void seemed to shatter into thousands of pieces, intertwining with each other. The move is not bad, but the power is too weak. Little 8 shook his head and unleashed a punch. Swish! Yi Chen's sword attack collapsed, and he was forced to take a step back. So strong! Yi Chen's eyes turned solemn as he unleashed the second style of spacetime sword, Burial Sword. The power is still too weak. Little 8 punched out again, breaking the sword burial style cleanly. Is this what it means to defeat 10 with brute force? Yi Chen did not feel that Little 8's fist technique was very profound, but his own sword technique was unable to contend against the opponent's fist technique. It collapsed upon contact. Black hole form. Yi Chen used his strongest sword technique, black hole form. As the heavenly sword was swung, 5 rotating black dots enveloped Little 8. This move is interesting, but it's a pity that its power is still lacking. 80's right arm muscles swelled as it punched out. Crackling sounds could be heard as 5 black dots exploded. A berserk power shot out in all directions, blowing Yi Chen away in a sorry state. 80 stood still and commented, "If you want to resist me, your power Upanishad must reach the consummate realm. Do as you see fit." Must the power Upanishad reach the complete realm? Yi Chen fell into deep thought. In the next 3 months, Yi Chen would challenge Little 8 every 3 days. He realized that he could feel the source of the power Upanishad from Little 8's fist technique, which was incredible. One had to know that he could not feel the source of the power Upanishad from Heaven's Splitter. He could only feel the existence of the power Upanishad. Could it be? Yi Chen thought of a possibility. Legend had it that after the Upanishad reached the complete realm, there was an even higher realm, and that was the law. If the opponent had grasped a trace of the power law, they could indeed sense the source of the power Upanishad more clearly. However, even an ordinary demigod could not comprehend the law. Could it be that the opponent in front of him was a powerful demigod? No, since the opponent was created by the desolate god, it was very simple for the desolate god to bestow the power of law to them. They did not need to reach the demigod realm. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's heart trembled. Clearly, the humanoid rabbits were different from the desolate god tower's desolate spirit. They were more special and unpredictable. After exchanging blows again and again, Yi Chen's comprehension of the power Upanishad deepened. Power is everywhere. Power can penetrate the heavens and the earth. Power exists in every corner, including the mind. Power is power, and it comes from faith. Another month passed. Finally, Yi Chen's power Upanishad reached the complete realm. With the improvement of the power Upanishad, his heart power had also improved by a lot. From the midstage of the heart sword realm to the peak of the midstage of the heart sword realm, he was only one step away from the late stage of the heart sword realm. The power Upanishad was too special. One had to have enough faith. Without enough faith, it would be impossible to completely understand the power Upanishad. However, the requirement for a refined body sovereign to understand the power Upanishad was much lower. Their chi and blood were very vigorous, and they were innately compatible with the power Upanishad. It was just like in the world of ordinary people, strong people would always give people a sense of security. This was also a manifestation of power. With the Upanishad of the power Upanishad, all of Yi Chen's sword arts had been upgraded to supreme sword arts. Among them, the spacetime sword art was the strongest. It was originally not a weak supreme sword art, but now it was unknown how many times stronger it was. Very good. In just 4 months, you have comprehended the power Upanishad to the Upanishad. Your comprehension is not bad. You have passed my test. Little 8 nodded. He was very satisfied with Yi Chen's performance. I want to have a spar with you. Since the other party's foundation was the same as his, Yi Chen wanted to know what level the other party's strength was at, and whether he had grasped a trace of the power law. Have a spar with me? Little 8's body, which was about to leave, stopped. He turned his head and looked at Yi Chen. Do you think that I am too friendly to you? Little 8's eyes turned blood red, and his killing intent was revealed. Yi Chen was about to explain, but it was too late. Little 8's thick legs stomped on the ground. Before Yi Chen could react, he saw a violent fist smashing over. This fist contained incomparably terrifying violence. Yi Chen was sure that even the baboon ferocious beast, Tifula, wasn't this terrifying. Little 8, you are being mischievous again. A hand stopped Little 8's fist. It was the human-shaped rabbit that Yi Chen saw at the beginning. He had appeared beside Yi Chen out of nowhere and blocked this attack for Yi Chen. Otherwise, Yi Chen would have died. Big brother! The blood in Little 8's eyes faded. He glared at Yi Chen and turned to leave. Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. He was a little confused. He didn't know why the other party wanted to kill him. My 7 brothers, besides second brother and third brother, the other 5 are more irritable. You must not disobey them or do anything unnecessary. The human-shaped rabbit said while gnawing on the golden radish. Understood. After this lesson, how could Yi Chen not understand that in this place, he was just an ant? All he had to do was accept the test obediently and not do anything else. Your comprehension is not bad. Otherwise, I wouldn't have saved you. I would have let you be killed by Little 8. Take care. The human-shaped rabbit took a step and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1385. Very quickly, 7 came out. Xiao Qi's body was tall and slim, slightly taller than Yi Chen. It had a pair of rabbit eyes that were very narrow and sharp. Although 8 is stronger than me, similar to second and third brother, my test is much harder than 8's. If you don't meet the requirements, I will kill you. 7 said without any emotions. Understood. Yi Chen nodded his head. Very good, I will only use 1,000th of my strength. If you can defeat me, then you pass. The 7 of them were all stronger than Yi Chen, and it was impossible for Yi Chen to defeat them. But Boss gave them a rule which was to suppress their strength. 8 suppressed it the most, but he didn't like to be defeated by Yi Chen, so he said that Yi Chen passed. But Yi Chen said that he wanted to exchange blows with him, which infuriated 8. Without a doubt, Yi Chen lost the first time he clashed with 7. Shao Qi specialized in leg arts. Once that pair of rabbit legs kicked toward Yi Chen, the sky was filled with leg shadows. Each leg shadow contained an explosive power, and Yi Chen could sense the 5 profound of earth, water, fire, wind, and strength. However, Yi Chen could also sense that Shao Qi had not mastered the power law, but his leg arts were much more profound than his sword art. 2 years, how can I defeat him? This was just 1,000th of his strength. If he went all out, he could smash him into pieces with one kick and wipe him out of this world. Your sword technique hasn't reached the peak, and you haven't merged the mysteries of strength and the other mysteries. 7 reminded Yi Chen. Yi Chen faintly nodded. Indeed, because he had only raised his power profound to perfection half a year ago, his sword arts couldn't reach perfection in such a short time. Moreover, Shao Qi's leg arts were clearly a level higher than his sword arts. If he wanted to defeat 1,000th of the opponent's strength, his sword arts would have to be at least at the same level as the opponent's leg arts. 2 years wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. It depended on how he spent it. To Yi Chen, these 2 years had passed too quickly. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. The 4 symbols sword art has finally reached perfection. After countless exchanges, Yi Chen's 4 symbols sword art became more and more perfect. In the end, its might even surpassed that of the space-time sword art. Every move was naturally domineering. Overlord's Sword of the 4 Elephants. Challenging 7 once more, Yi Chen used the first stance of the 4-elephant sword technique, the 4-elephant Overlord Sword. With a flash of sword light, the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise tangled together, slashing towards the leg shadows. Crackle! This time, the 2 of them were evenly matched. Take my kick again. This was the first time 7 moved. Her speed was unbelievably fast. In just a blink of an eye, 7 appeared on the right side of Yi Chen and kicked. This kick made Yi Chen feel a world-destroying power. If he wasn't careful, even the Saint artifact armor wouldn't be able to protect his life. Even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. 4 extremes of heaven and earth. The 4-beast sword energy condensed on his body, and the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise sword auras appeared around Yi Chen's body, canceling out a part of Shao Qi's leg energy. Meanwhile, Yi Chen flipped his wrist, and the heaven sword violently stabbed toward Shao Qi. A chaotic sword light condensed on the sword tip. 4-elephant sword technique 3rd stance, destruction sword. 7 hurriedly swept his leg towards the sword light. Hong Long. A destructive shockwave radiated out in all directions. 7 flew backward and landed on the ground in a stagger. You've actually created a new sword technique. You've won. Shao Qi looked at Yi Chen with a shocked expression. In the past, among the people who had entered the desolate god's secret realm, there were very few who had passed Shao Qi's level, not to mention her level. In the past million years, apart from Yi Chen, only 9 people had passed her level. Moreover, they had spent more time than Yi Chen, which was almost 2 years. I was lucky. Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. The destruction sword was on the same level as the black hole stance. However, the 4-elephant sword technique merged power more completely, which was why it was much stronger than the black hole stance. If not, he wouldn't have been able to defeat 7. There is no luck. This is your potential. 7 flashed into the mist. Next is 6. I don't know what aspect I need to improve on this time. 8 allowed his power to reach the max realm. 7's test allowed his power to be merged into the 4-elephant sword technique. Yi Chen guessed that the content of each stage would be different. To Yi Chen, the test in the valley was both a danger and an opportunity. 6 came out. Little 6 was very short, only a little over a meter tall. You're pretty good to be able to make it to my place. But let me tell you something. In the past million years, of the 9 people who made it to my place, only 4 of them managed to defeat me when I was at 1,000th of my strength, Little Six said slowly. I will do my best. 6's strength wasn't much stronger than 7's. Yi Chen, who created the destruction sword, could even exchange dozens of blows with him, and didn't collapse right away. Little Six specialized in palm techniques, which contained the 5 elemental profundities and power profundities. They are both supreme martial skills, but my annihilation sword is slightly weaker than his. It seems like I have to create the 4th style of the 5 elements sword art. Of course, the prerequisite is that I have to integrate the profound of power into the 5 elements sword art, just like the 4 symbols sword art. In the following days, Yi Chen didn't use the 4-elephant sword technique to fight Six. Instead, he used the 5-element sword technique. In the first year, Yi Chen lost miserably every time. Luckily, Six controlled his strength and didn't kill Yi Chen within 4 years. Otherwise, Yi Chen would have died hundreds of times. In the second year, Yi Chen successfully merged the power mysteries into the 5-element sword technique. It increased the power of the 5-element sword technique. Unfortunately, the third move, defense sword technique, was much weaker than the destruction sword technique. Even the destruction sword technique couldn't do anything to Six, let alone the defense sword technique. I have to create the 4th move. Yi Chen carefully observed Six's palm technique and hoped to find inspiration. The 5 elements are mutually reinforcing and subduing each other. 5 elements is the most stable among the complementary powers Upanishads because it is composed of 5 different powers Upanishad. If I want to use the deepest essence of the 5 elements Upanishads, I must learn from each other and find the key point. Yi Chen did not stop thinking at all times. His mind was filled with inspiration. On the 3rd year, Yi Chen, who had been blown away once again, seemed to have a 5-element mountain in his mind. Each mountain was shaped like a huge stone sword, incomparably heavy. Got it. Joy flashed in Yi Chen's eyes and he waved his sword. Whoosh! The thick sword light seemed like it was going to crush everything in front of it. It slashed at Six with unstoppable momentum. Chapter 1386. Rumble. Little Six's entire body was sent flying. Yi Chen's sword was like a whole, like a mountain, like the sea, like the earth, like the sky. As this sword slashed out, Yi Chen felt as if his soul and body had been swept out, and there was a feeling of emptiness. Heavy sword style. The 4th style of the 5 elements sword style, heavy sword style. In the universe, the 5 elements were the most stable. If they continued to evolve, they would become planets, and planets were the place where all life lived. Stepping on the earth was very stable. Yi Chen's heavy sword style had obtained this essence. What is the name of this move? Little Six curiously sized up Yi Chen. Heavy sword style. Yi Chen replied. Heavy sword style, not bad. Maybe you have a chance to reach 3rd brother's level. Of course, the premise is that you can continue to improve. After saying this, Little Six entered the fog and disappeared. Watching Little Six leave, Yi Chen looked at the sword in his hand and said to himself, Heavy sword style, this is the eruption of all my inspiration. Even if I can create the 3rd style of the yin-yang sword style, it will definitely not be as good as the heavy sword style. After all, the 5-element sword style was the first sword style created by Yi Chen, and Yi Chen had also spent the most effort on it. The heavy sword style could be said to be a transformation of the 5 elements sword style, a sublimation. If the 5 elements sword style was the soil, then the heavy sword style was a sapling that grew on the soil, absorbing the essence of the 5 elements sword style. In terms of power, the heavy sword style was the well-deserved number 1 sword style of Yi Chen. The shattering sword style and the black hole style couldn't compare to it. In fact, Yi Chen felt that the supreme martial arts of the 5 tribe leaders or Empyrean Sea Fiend couldn't compare to the heavy sword style. He felt that the heavy sword style was weaker than the heavy sword style. This had nothing to do with the passage of time. It was a completely coincidental burst of inspiration. My current strength shouldn't be much weaker than the leaders of the 5 tribes. Yi Chen was sure that he was still not a match for the leaders of the 5 major tribes. However, it was not like before, where the gap between them was ridiculously huge. The martial Tao primordial spirits of the leaders of the 5 major tribes were stronger than his. They were at least at the intermediate silver level. However, his heart power was higher than theirs. He was at the peak of the intermediate stage of the heart sword realm. He was only one step away from the late stage. Heart power had nothing to do with time. Generally, the more talented one was, the higher one's heart power would be. Those who relied on time to improve their heart power would not be too high unless they had some kind of opportunity. For example, the Redbud Flower tribe had a very high average heart power because they had the word heart left behind by the demigod. The 5 tribe leaders had the advantage of having a strong martial Dao Yuan Shun and possessing a heavenly saint artifact. Yi Chen's advantage was that his heart force was strong and his heavy sword style was slightly better. However, compared to Empyrean Sea Fiend, Yi Chen was still ridiculously lacking. Not to mention anything else, just Empyrean Sea Fiend's 9th level domain was enough to strangle all of his advantages. Little 5 was chubby and looked like a rolling ball as he walked. Yi Chen could tell at a glance that the other party was walking the path of body tempering. Moreover, it was not an ordinary path. Even with the naked eye, Yi Chen could see that the fat on Little 5's body was astonishingly elastic. As he walked, the fat on his body shook up and down, and a buzzing sound could be heard continuously. One could faintly see circles of ripples spreading out. If you can scratch my skin a little, you win. Little 5 sat down and took a huge silver radish to gnaw on. He did not even look at Yi Chen as he enjoyed himself. That fat. Yi Chen frowned. He felt that it would not be easy to scratch Little 5's skin. After hesitating for a moment, Yi Chen began to attack. First, he used the Annihilation Sword. The penetrating power of this sword was very strong, enough to destroy everything. The heavenly sword stabbed out violently, and the chaotic sword light swept towards Little 5. Pop! A scene that made Yi Chen's scalp tingle occurred. When the chaotic sword light landed on Little 5's body, it felt as if it had landed on an elastic rubber. It first sank in and then bounced back, almost hitting Yi Chen himself. What kind of body tempering technique is this? Yi Chen clicked his tongue. Not giving up, Yi Chen held the sword with both hands and slashed out. An incomparably heavy sword light swept towards Little 5 again. This sword was the heavy sword style, Yi Chen's strongest sword move. Unfortunately, although the heavy sword style was incomparably heavy, Little 5's fat was even stronger. The heavy sword light slashed on it, causing the fat to tremble unceasingly. As the fat trembled, the power of the sword light continued to weaken. With a "pu" sound, the sword was sliced open and slashed on the ground to the right of Little 5, leaving a sword mark. The heavy sword style was still ineffective. So that's how it is. Yi Chen finally understood the secret of Little 5's fat. Little 5 was indeed walking the path of body tempering, and his body tempering technique actually contained the profound meaning of yin and yang. It was just like the Taiji fist, hard and soft, yin and yang coexisting. Unless the attack was much stronger than the defense, it would be impossible to break through the defense. Of course, he could also study the yin-yang sword style and create a yin-yang sword move that could restrain the opponent. Fortunately, the time limit for challenging Little 5 was 8 years. There should be enough time. Giving up on other sword arts, Yi Chen began to use the yin-yang sword style to test Little 5's fat. Yi Chen's yin-yang sword style currently had 2 styles. The first was yin and yang coexisting, and the second was yin-yang tai chi, yin and yang coexisting, and the sword chi had spirituality. It wouldn't increase or decrease, and it wouldn't dissipate. After locking onto the opponent's chi, Unless the opponent died or was broken, it wouldn't disappear. However, Little Five's fat wouldn't be affected by hard or soft methods. Yin and Yang coexisting couldn't do anything about it, mainly because the power of Yin and Yang coexisting wasn't strong enough. Yi Chen's train of thought was to create an enhanced version of Yin and Yang coexisting. Time passed unknowingly. Yi Chen had more and more inspiration for the Yin-Yang sword style. As he was immersed in the Yin-Yang sword style for a long time, Yi Chen's every move, gaze, and train of thought contained the changes of Yin and Yang. This was something that even he didn't notice. Only Little Five looked at Yi Chen in surprise. Boss has good eyesight. It won't be long before this kid can break my Yin-Yang tyrant body. Little Five thought in his heart. The 5th year. Done. Yi Chen revealed a smile on his face as he looked at Little Five. Come on, let me see what sword move you have created. Little Five stood up, and the fat on his body shook violently. With him as the center, circles of ripples spread out, as if a stone was thrown into a calm lake. This move of mine is called Yin-Yang Wuji. Take this. Yin-Yang sword style's first style, Yin and Yang coexisting. The second style, Yin-Yang Tai Chi. The third style, Yin-Yang Wuji. Holding the heavenly sword in his hand, Yi Chen seemed slow but was actually fast. He slashed out with his sword. Without a sound, a slippery sword chi that was like a loach swam towards Little Five. Little Five's eyes narrowed, and the fat on his body shook even more violently. The sword chi kept swimming around Xiaowu's body, looking for a weak point. Xiaowu wanted to use his fat to repel the sword chi, but the sword chi was even more slippery than his fat. After several tries, Xiaowu said helplessly, "You win." Although the sword chi couldn't penetrate his defense for the time being, as time passed, he would eventually leave a flaw. Chapter 1387. You are the most talented person I have seen in a million years. Boss's vision is really not something we can compare with. But from Brother 4 onwards you have to be careful. He has the 9th domain. Xiaowu was very optimistic about Yi Chen. Creating a sword movement that could restrain the Yin-Yang tyrant body in 8 years was not something that ordinary people could do. He had thought that Yi Chen would not be able to do it, but he did not expect that not only did he do it, he did it 3 years ahead of time. I will give it my all. Yi Chen found that these humanoid rabbits were actually quite gentle as long as they were not provoked. Little Four's body shape was very similar to Little Eight's, but he did not have as many muscles as Little Eight. He was a very burly type, and Yi Chen felt an invisible pressure from him. Little Four's voice was very cold. My domain is the scorching domain. If you can't resist it, you will be burned to ashes. With that said, with Little Four as the center, a terrifying force spread out. Wherever it went, the ground melted and the void cracked. This scorching heat was no longer a simple change in temperature, but a change in the rules. Seeing this, Yi Chen's expression couldn't help but change. When Sea Demon Heavenly Venerable was chasing him, although his Sea Demon domain was equally frightening, he was running for his life at that time. How could he have the energy to feel the Sea Demon domain? He only felt that he was no match for it. Is this the 9th domain? Although the domain could not increase one's combat power by much, it could suppress the enemy's strength. When the enemy's strength was suppressed, it was equivalent to his own strength being increased in disguise. In short, the domain must not be weak. Even if it didn't suppress others, at least it couldn't be suppressed by others. Originally, Yi Chen thought that even if the 9th domain was many times stronger than the peak 8th domain, it would not be too outrageous. But now seeing the power of the scorching domain, he knew that he was wrong. The 9th domain was not on the same level as the peak 8th domain. The power of the 9th domain was not weaker than a perfect supreme martial art. Once enveloped, it was equivalent to being bombarded by a perfect supreme martial art at all times. Let alone using 100% of one's strength, it would be good if one could use 1,000th of one's strength. If one stayed inside for a long time, as Little Four said, he would be burned to ashes. If you can stay in the scorching domain for 15 minutes, you win. Little Four said. Let me try. After speaking, Yi Chen propped up his green lotus sword domain and walked into his opponent's scorching domain. Chi. It was like a ball of snow thrown into a furnace. Within a few breaths, Yi Chen's green lotus sword realm had been melted, and he could no longer release it. Without the green lotus sword realm, Yi Chen could only use his immortal sword body to resist Little Four's scorching realm. 1 breath, 10 breaths, 100 breaths. I can't. Like a cooked shrimp, Yi Chen retreated from the scorching domain. His whole body was steaming hot, and his skin was red. 100 breaths is my limit. Yi Chen shook his head. Seeing that Yi Chen had retreated, Little Four immediately took back his scorching domain. Maintaining the scorching domain would consume a lot of his power, and it would be impossible for him to maintain it continuously. In the following month, Yi Chen did not try again. He was very clear that unless his green lotus sword realm could break through to the 9th level, or his immortal sword body could break through to the 14th level from the 12th level, he would not be able to resist his opponent's scorching domain. There was no need to think about the immortal sword body. Without enough supreme great swords, he would not be able to improve it. Therefore, the only way was to improve his green lotus sword realm. And the fastest way to improve his green lotus sword realm was to make a breakthrough in his martial art. Yi Chen's green lotus sword spell was a supreme martial art. As long as he could break through to the legendary level, there was a 50% chance that he could make his green lotus sword realm reach the 9th level. Little Five's body training martial art contained the profound of yin and yang. I can also make my martial art contain the profound of the 5 elements. Keeping to his words, Yi Chen tried to combine the green lotus sword spell with the 5 elements profound. The earliest green lotus sword spell was a wood element sword spell, but it did not matter, since it did not conflict with the 5 elements profound, since there was a wood element profound within the 5 elements. As long as the wood element profound was the main element, it would be fine as long as the other 4 were the support. This was the so-called wood element being the main element of the 5 elements. Not only would it not affect the effect of the green lotus sword spell, it would also infinitely increase the effect of the green lotus sword spell. In the 3rd month, Yi Chen combined the wood element profound with the green lotus sword spell. The process was very smooth, since the green lotus sword spell was originally of the wood element. In the 6th month, Yi Chen combined the fire element profound with the green lotus sword spell. Wood fed fire, and the next would be earth. In the 2nd year, the earth element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. In the 4th year, the gold element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. In the 8th year, the water element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. The process was that wood fed fire, fire fed earth, earth fed metal, and metal fed water. However, it was not over yet, because the 5 elements profound had not completed a cycle yet. Like a circle, wood fed fire, fire fed earth, earth fed metal, and metal fed water. In the end, water and wood needed to be connected together as well. In the 12th year, Yi Chen's body shone with a layer of blue light, which contained 5 different colors. Then, a huge 5-colored green lotus grew, bloomed, and bore fruit. With the birth of the 5-colored green lotus, Yi Chen sat on top of it with his legs crossed. The green lotus seemed to have become one with him. Shoo! Yi Chen opened his eyes, and a 5-colored godly light flashed out. So this is the legendary martial art? So magical! Although the supreme martial art was extremely powerful, compared to the legendary martial art, it was not even worth mentioning. The legendary martial art seemed to have its own consciousness, or perhaps it had combined with his bloodline. At this moment, the green lotus sword spell was not just a martial art, but more like the power of Yi Chen's bloodline. With one breath, the Green Lotus Sword spell operated naturally. It was just like the chi and blood in the human body operating naturally. There was no need to purposely activate it. With a thought, the Green Lotus Sword realm was released. Gurgle, gurgle, the sound of flowing water was heard, and the Green Lotus Sword realm had an earth-shattering change. With Yi Chen as the center, a huge 5-colored green lotus shadow spread out and kept growing. Yi Chen had a feeling that if he used all of his power, the Green Lotus Sword realm could cover 1 light year, 10 light years, or even more. Of course, it would have to be outside of the Huang Xin continent, since the Huang Xin continent was not even 1 light year big. The Huang Xin continent was enough to limit the Sword realm to a very small area. Little Four stared at Yi Chen without blinking. His eyes were filled with expectation. How could he not see that Yi Chen had made a huge breakthrough in the past 12 years? The Green Lotus Sword realm had reached the 9th level. Come on! Little Four released his scorching domain. All right. Yi Chen maintained the Green Lotus Sword realm as he walked towards Little Four step by step. Chapter 1388. Boom, boom, boom. The Burning Field and the Green Lotus Sword Field were both level 9 domains. The moment the two clashed, a huge sound was produced, as if two worlds were colliding. Yi Chen frowned. He realized that the part of the Green Lotus Sword Field that was in contact with the Burning Field was gradually burning up. Ashes rose into the air, dancing in the air. After thinking for a while, Yi Chen could not help but feel relieved. Although they were both level 9 domains, there were still differences in strength. Compared to the Burning Field, the Green Lotus Sword Field was still a bit immature. It would be impossible for him to completely resist it. 100 breaths, 500 breaths, 15 minutes. Very soon, Yi Chen had endured 15 minutes. What made his expression change was that his Green Lotus Sword Field had burned up more than half. He estimated that in another 15 minutes, the Green Lotus Sword Field would be completely burned up. Yi Chen estimated that the opponent's burning field was at least in the middle stage of the 9th level, or even the late stage. Boss, it seems like we really have a chance to leave the Desolate God's secret territory and return to Lord Desolate God's side. Little Four thought. The third brother was a human-shaped rabbit with a face full of smiles. Seeing him, Yi Chen felt his mood lighten up a lot. In a trance, he felt like he had arrived at a fragrant grassland. The sky was clear and white clouds were floating in the sky. A gentle breeze blew past, and the green grass bent down, forming a soft ripple. Everything was so beautiful. What a scary influence! But the next moment Yi Chen immediately woke up. At this moment, in his eyes, the humanoid rabbit old 3 had suddenly become countless times more dangerous. This kind of powerful warrior who could affect your mind without even noticing was a nightmare. You would not know when you would fall for it. The unknown was always the scariest. The power that was on the surface would only make people afraid. Not bad. You can actually wake up in 2 hours. The third brother nodded with a smile. What? Yi Chen felt that only a moment had passed. How did it become 2 hours? Don't be surprised. If your heart force can reach the perfect level, you can also do this. The third brother explained. Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded inwardly. Indeed, reaching the highest level in any aspect would result in unimaginable power. For example, reaching the 9th level of sword intent, the 9th level of sword domain, or breaking through to legendary level. Of course, in comparison, reaching the perfect level of heart force was even scarier. This did not mean that the perfect level of heart force was stronger than the 9th level sword intent or sword domain, but it was mainly because the perfect level of heart force could make people fall for it unknowingly. My test is very simple. If you can wake up in 10 breaths, then you will pass. 10 breaths. Of course, if his Yuan Shen could break through to the silver intermediate level, he would be able to shorten the time needed. After all, the Yuan Shen was the foundation of a person. If the Yuan Shen was strong, it would be strong in every aspect. After all, the Yuan Shen could not be born out of thin air. It was something that was derived from the Yuan Shen. The third brother's test was 32 years. Yi Chen had to reach the late stage of heart force. Of course, if his Yuan Shen could break through to the intermediate silver level, it would shorten the time. After all, the Yuan Shen was the foundation of a person. The Yuan Shen was equivalent to the heart force. The stronger the Yuan Shen, the stronger the Yuan Shen, the stronger the heart force. However, it could make the heart force more resistant to external influences. Speaking of which, the threat of being wiped out had actually helped him the most. Without it, he would not have improved so much. Imagine, if there were two people with the same comprehensive ability, and one was living a comfortable life while the other was living under the threat of death, who would improve the most? Of course, the threat of elimination was the greatest help to Yi Chen. Without the threat of elimination, Yi Chen would not have improved so much. Imagine two people with the same talent, one living a comfortable life, and the other living in the threat of death. Who would improve more? I have to pass the third brother's test. I have stayed in the desolate god's secret realm for hundreds of millions of years. Although there were many people like him who came to the third brother's place, only 10% of them succeeded. When it came to the second brother, they all died. I have to pass third bro and second bro's test. I've been in the desolate god's secret realm for hundreds of millions of years. In these hundreds of millions of years, although there were many people like him who made it to third bro's place, only 10% of them succeeded. When it came to second bro's place, they were all wiped out. I have stayed here long enough. The desolate god's place is my future harbor. In the mist, the human-shaped rabbit who was chewing on the golden carrot shouted in his heart. The heart force was vague and intangible. It was an invisible power, a power that transcended the natural world. It was the only power that was not limited by the heavenly Tao. The heart power of a sword artist was still different from normal people. If a normal person's heart power was gentle and unpredictable, then the heart power of a sword artist would be sharp and condensed. Yi Chen was sure that if his heart power reached completion, he would not be able to do what his third brother had done. But, on the other hand, the things that a sword artist's heart power could do were things that a normal person's heart power would not be able to do, such as directly shattering the enemy's spirit and fighting spirit. Destroying a person's spirit was more terrifying than confusing a person's spirit. If a person's spirit was destroyed, he would be like a walking corpse. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. In the blink of an eye, 25 years had passed. Yi Chen's heart force was still at the peak of the middle stage, unable to advance. This made Yi Chen a little anxious for the first time. However, the consequence of being anxious was that it would be harder for him to make a breakthrough. After all, once he was anxious, his heart would be in chaos. Once his heart was in chaos, how could he concentrate his heart force and make a breakthrough to the late stage? 28 years, 30 years, 31 years. There was only 1 year left from the 32 years. Sigh. The third brother sighed. For hundreds of millions of years, too many people had failed here. In fact, he also hoped that these people could pass, but he could not go easy on them. The boss would make adjustments according to the strength of the people who came, such as suppressing most of their strength, or testing them in certain aspects. The boss was also restricted by the rules of the secret realm and could not cheat. Although they were created by Lord Desolate God, and their lifespans were extremely long, to the point that even a supreme being could not imagine, they still had feelings and wishes, and the wish of the 8 brothers was to leave the Desolate God's secret realm. After they left, Lord Desolate God would send a new desolate spirit to replace them. There was only 1 month left. Yi Chen's heart was filled with unwillingness. He was calm and indifferent, but he was not a god. He had some weaknesses. No one was willing to die, and he was no exception. The last week, Yi Chen's eyes were scarlet red. His entire body was filled with unstable heart force. At this moment, Yi Chen was in a very dangerous situation. His heart force was very mysterious and dangerous at the same time. If he couldn't control it, he could easily trigger a heart demon. He might go crazy and die, or die from exhaustion of his heart force. He might even fall into a heart demon world and become a walking corpse. The last day, Yi Chen's hair instantly turned white. His essence, qi, and spirit had completely disappeared. It was as if he had become a corpse. The third brother exclaimed softly. He couldn't help but look at Yi Chen. At this moment, his heart force couldn't even sense Yi Chen's existence. It was as if this person had disappeared. Condensing a point of heart force? Very soon, the third brother saw through the mystery. It turned out that Yi Chen had condensed his heart force into a small point, wanting to make a final eruption. Even if this method succeeded, it would harm his vitality. Under normal circumstances, no one would dare to do such a thing. Chapter 1389. Yi Chen could no longer feel his own existence. It was as if he had truly died. There were no flickers of thoughts, no ripples of life. Heart force was actually the materialization of intelligence. Without heart force, intelligence would be lost. Therefore, focusing one's heart force on a single point was a very dangerous thing. It was very easy to turn one's fake death into real death. If one lost their intelligence, it was no different from being dead. In a muddle-headed world of darkness without a trace of light, a weak speck of light floated about. Who am I? What am I doing? Within the weak speck of light, a strand of thought appeared. Where is this? So strange, why am I here? The thought became more and more intense, causing the speck of light to become unstable. It was sometimes dim and sometimes bright. I am Yi Chen. Suddenly, a firm voice rang out. The speck of light suddenly exploded, turning into a sun that radiated boundless light. Boom! Yi Chen woke up, and the spirit in his eyes was unprecedentedly intense. Meanwhile, his heart power had reached the next level, breaking through the limit and reaching the late stage. However, Yi Chen's hair didn't change back. It was still white like snow. Focusing one's heart force and then exploding it was very damaging to one's essence qi. The essence qi of a supreme being wasn't Zhen Yuan, it was the source. It was very hard to replenish. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least 10,000 years to recover. Of course, that was under the situation of not using any treasures and slowly recovering. If there were rare treasures, it could shorten the time by 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. With his origin damaged, Yi Chen felt that his foundation had dropped by more than 70%. His martial Dao Yuan Shen was dim and cryptic, no longer as silver as before. But now, Yi Chen's heart force was unimaginably strong. Overall, his strength didn't decrease, but instead increased explosively. Good, very good. Old 3 laughed heartily. He originally thought that the other party had already broken down, but who would have thought that the other party had pushed himself to the brink of death, forcing him into a hopeless situation. Either he succeeded or he perished, it was all up to him. 1 in 10,000, finally, one has appeared. The humanoid rabbit munching on the golden radish was so excited that he was about to go crazy. Not only was his talent high, but he was also ruthless to himself. Such a genius was definitely 1 in 10,000. There was not even 1 in 10,000 geniuses. When his heart force reached the late stage, Yi Chen discovered that there was a faint blue glow on his third brother's body. Colored heart force? Yi Chen's heart thumped. According to the records, there was another realm after the great circle of heart force, and this realm was the light of the soul. From the looks of it, OL3 was just one step away from condensing the light of the soul. It was said that everyone's light of the soul was different. It reflected a person's true heart. If a seemingly kind person's light of the soul was dark, then it meant that they had a dark heart to begin with. Once they walked the path of darkness, they would become unprecedentedly powerful. Of course, it was still too early to talk about light of the soul. It was extremely difficult for demigods to condense light of the soul, and once they succeeded, they could easily wipe out other demigods. Are you ready? Old San said to Yi Chen. Ready. Yi Chen's heart force was formless and colorless, but it was abnormally condensed, just like a sharp sword. However, in the next moment Yi Chen's eyes became dazed. Very soon Yi Chen woke up, and he couldn't help but look at Old San. He himself didn't know how long he had been bewitched. Old San smiled. 7 breaths. Congratulations. Success. Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. Today was the last day. If he didn't succeed, then he would be obliterated, and no one would be spared. Second brother's trial was the most difficult, but I believe that you can pass it. Old San was full of confidence in Yi Chen. Most importantly, he saw Yi Chen's determination, the determination to throw himself into the jaws of death and survive. People with such determination would usually be able to escape from desperate straits. Thank you for your auspicious words. Yi Chen's heart was both apprehensive and excited. At this stage, he could no longer have any other thoughts. If he succeeded, he would live. If he failed, he would die. My name is Embark. The second-ranked human rabbit walked out of the mist. He was the first to tell Yi Chen his name. Embark opened his right hand and a square space appeared. This is my space maze. There are a total of 108,000 square spaces inside, and none of them have an exit. You need to find a weak spot and break it. Remember, the space inside can move. When you can walk out, that is when you pass. Of course, if you don't come out in 64 years, then you don't need to come out. Space maze. Yi Chen couldn't help but look at the space in Embark's hand. So mysterious. Yi Chen found that he couldn't see through this space. Could Embark have grasped the space law? Yi Chen pursed his lips. His space profound had reached completion. Since he couldn't see through this space, it was obvious that Embark had grasped the space law. Fortunately, Embark's foundation was the same as his, so the space law shouldn't be too solid. There was still some hope. Let's begin. Embark waved his hand and the square space fell down. It quickly grew until it was 10 square meters wide. Creak, a door opened. Yi Chen didn't hesitate and stepped into the space. In an instant, the door behind him closed. The weak spot found it. In the square space, Yi Chen quickly found the unstable spot. Pulling out the heaven sword, Yi Chen slashed open a thick sword mark, and his body flashed in. One space after another, a completely sealed environment. Yi Chen finally understood the difficulty of this stage. Not only did it test one's talent and comprehension in space, it also tested one's willpower. No matter how strong one's heart was, there would be a moment of collapse. Think about it, if you were placed in a narrow space, to find a way out, you would have to enter countless narrow spaces. This kind of endless, almost hopeless life could easily drive one crazy. Embark had said that the space inside was moving. 108,000 spaces were constantly moving. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Soon, a year had passed, and Yi Chen had broken through 10,000 spaces. Just as he was about to break through the space wall in front of him, suddenly Yi Chen turned his head to the side. That was also the weak spot of the space. Each space has more than one weak spot. Yi Chen's expression was a little ugly. Finding the weak spot required time. In the past, Yi Chen had always found a weak spot and directly broke through it without thinking about anything else. Now, it seemed that this method was wrong. This space had a total of 5 weak spots, and Yi Chen didn't know which one to choose. Whatever, I'll choose the weakest spot. Yi Chen made up his mind and slashed open the weakest spot. Chapter 1390. Second brother, what do you think of this kid? The human-shaped rabbit, who was gnawing on a golden radish, walked over. Embark thought for a while and said, I think highly of him. Although his talent and comprehension aren't the best in the past hundreds of millions of years, he is actually the best overall. Sometimes, talent and comprehension can't even compare to determination. I saw it clearly when he was trying to break through the third brother's level. After taking a bite of the golden radish, the humanoid rabbit nodded. I think so too. He has a will and determination that he won't give up even if he dies. Over the past hundreds of millions of years, about 100 people have reached third brother's place, but only 10 have succeeded. These 10 people have spent around 20 years, with the longest being 26 years. The other 90 people have failed mainly because they couldn't withstand the pressure of death and their hearts were in chaos. Yeah, this kid's mind was also in a mess before. Fortunately, at the last moment, he borrowed the pressure of death and forcefully condensed his heart power into a single point. If he couldn't condense his heart power into a single point, or if he didn't have enough will to live, he would have died. Now, let's see if he can get out of your space maze. In 30 years, Yi Chen had broken through a total of 110,000 spaces, but he only had half of the time left. In the remaining 33 years, I can continue to break through hundreds of thousands of spaces, but can I find the exit? Yi Chen reflected. Rather than wasting time blindly looking for an exit, I might as well take a gamble. The laws were something only powerful demigods could comprehend. Yi Chen didn't expect himself to comprehend the space laws in 33 years, but he only needed to find a trace of the rules of the space laws, such as a way to leave the space maze. Everything in the world had its own rules, but the primal chaos had abandoned all rules and order. Eliminating all distracting thoughts, Yi Chen sat down and quietly observed the space in front of him. His soul power and heart power carefully scanned again and again. What the soul power saw were lines, densely packed and omnipresent, while what the heart power saw were inexplicable runes. Both had their own uses and complemented each other. 10 years passed. Yi Chen suddenly exclaimed in surprise. He saw a chain made of lines and symbols. This chain was rooted in the space he was in, and he didn't know where the other end was. Along the chain, Yi Chen's soul power and heart power spread out. Soon, Yi Chen saw another space through the chains, a space that was exactly the same as the one he was in. Could it be that this chain has pierced through 108,000 spaces? Yi Chen thought of a possibility. In his opinion, this possibility was most likely his only hope of leaving the space maze. Another 10 years passed. Through the chains, Yi Chen saw 68,000 spaces. He discovered that every once in a while, the chains would move. Correspondingly, the spaces that were pierced by the chains would also move. If he followed the original method, he might not be able to leave the space maze for the rest of his life unless he could grasp the laws of space and break through the space maze in one fell swoop. 72,000. 75,000. 81,000. 5 years passed, and there were only 8 years left. However, on this day, Yi Chen saw the space barrier of the space maze through the 81,000th space. As long as he could break that space barrier, he would be able to leave this place, and the 81,000th space was actually only 300 spaces away from the space he was in. The main reason was that the chains were twisting around like snakes, not in a straight line. Without further ado, Yi Chen broke through space after space, rushing over. However, rushing over required time. He had to break through the weak points of space, passing through space after space. Yi Chen had only rushed 1/10 of the way, and all the spaces had moved, messing up Yi Chen's plan. No rush. Yi Chen tried his best to regain his composure and continued to search for shortcut. This was like playing with a Rubik's Cube. It required patience and the ability to calculate. Experiment after experiment, failure after failure. Yi Chen felt that every moment was torture. He was only 10 spaces away from the space maze's outer wall, but he still failed on the verge of success. If it was someone else, they would have vomited blood and died from anger. It had to be known that the 64-year deadline was getting closer and closer. 62nd year. AI. Yi Chen sighed. His luck was really good this time. He was only 3 spaces away from the space maze's outer wall, just 1 step away. If only he could be a little faster. In fact, unknowingly, Yi Chen's speed of breaking through space was getting faster and faster. The Nether Saint I played a crucial role. The Nether Saint I contained the will of hell, allowing it to see through space and time. Finding the weak points of space was much easier than using soul force and heart force. After using it countless times, unknowingly, the Nether Saint I was slowly growing. 63rd year passed. Yi Chen regretted that he was just a little bit away. Due to his nervousness, Yi Chen did not feel any changes in his eyes. Originally, the Nether Saint I had a circle of gold around its pupil, with 2 vortexes in the shape of a twin star, slowly rotating. But now, the twin star vortexes had disappeared, turning into a golden vortex. Let's try again. Yi Chen was very unwilling. Soon, he found a route. This route had more than 400 spaces. His eyes focused on the weak points of the space. What? Yi Chen was surprised to find that he had found the weak points of the space. In his eyes, the weak points were like black dots on a piece of white paper, clearly visible and very eye-catching. So the Nether Saint I has evolved. In that case, let's see if I can see through the entire space maze. The original Nether Saint I was unable to see through the entire space maze because this space maze contained the space law. The Nether Saint I's level was not high enough, so it could only rely on soul force and heart force to follow the space law to observe each space. I saw through it. Yi Chen's voice was trembling. The Nether Saint I operated to the limit, and transparent spaces appeared in Yi Chen's eyes. Even the space law chains were no exception. Gradually, Yi Chen's vision passed through the outer wall of the space maze, and he saw 2 human-shaped rabbits on the outside. The human-shaped rabbit that was gnawing on the golden radish looked at Yi Chen, and his eyes collided with Yi Chen's. Second brother, he succeeded. His voice was also trembling. After so many years, he was finally leaving this place. Although the other party's method was very cheap, so what? As long as they could pass through, it was fine. He wished that he could lower the difficulty and let these people pass through easily. Unfortunately, he could not do that. He also did not dare to disobey the desolate god's order, as a true god was omniscient to a certain extent. After a quarter of an hour, Yi Chen came out from the square space maze. Chapter 1391. After 64 years, Yi Chen seemed to have gone through all the vicissitudes of life. He felt indescribably tired, mainly because he had consumed too much of his soul force and heart force. I succeeded. Yi Chen looked at the 2 humanoid rabbits. Throwing away the golden radish in his hand, the humanoid rabbit smiled. Good, very good. In hundreds of millions of years, you are the first person to pass the test. Speaking of which, us 8 brothers should thank you. Without you, who knows how long it would have taken us to leave the desolate god's secret realm. Perhaps we would have stayed here for hundreds of millions of years. You want to leave the desolate god's secret realm? How? Yi Chen himself had to leave eventually. Of course, that would be after dealing with Empyrean Sea Fiend. As if seeing through Yi Chen's thoughts, the humanoid rabbit said, "You are an outsider, so your method of leaving is different from ours. In the desolate god's secret realm, there is an ancient transmission array. Through this ancient transmission array, you can leave the desolate god continent. This method is only useful for you outsiders. People of the desolate race are rejected by the ancient transmission array. Later, I will draw a map of the desolate god's secret realm for you." Many thanks. After solving the problem of leaving, Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't want to stay in the desolate god continent forever. In the fog, the other 6 humanoid rabbits also walked out, each with a smile on their face. Even little 8, who wanted to kill Yi Chen, was very happy. For this, he specially apologized to Yi Chen. At that time, he didn't think that Yi Chen could pass all the tests, so he killed him. Now, he regretted it. If he had killed him, everything would have been rewritten. What surprised Yi Chen the most was the change in Sky Splitter. Sky Splitter's level had risen from elementary legend to peak legend. That terrifying fierce beast aura made even Yi Chen secretly praise it. Even the peak legend fierce beast that chased him before was only SOSO. The leading humanoid rabbit was called Rabbit Saint. He smiled. The desolate god's secret realm doesn't have many things, but there are many fierce beasts. Of course, nurturing him to peak legend fierce beast is my limit. It won't be easy to become a quasi-holy beast. Devouring fierce beast flesh won't work. He can only rely on himself to evolve. A quasi-holy beast was a bottleneck. Once it became a quasi-holy beast, it would not be too difficult to become a holy beast. With the accumulation of time, it would become a holy beast one day. Skysplitter, which had become a peak legend rank dire beast, was incomparably huge. It was more than 10 meters tall and nearly 30 meters long. Its 4 limbs were like a small mountain, emitting a powerful pressure. Of course, Yi Chen would always be his master. Seeing Yi Chen, Heaven Splitter ran over and rubbed his huge head against Yi Chen, playing around with all his might. Rubbing Heaven Splitter's head, Yi Chen felt that this was truly a great opportunity. Even though it was accompanied by great danger and he had almost been killed, Yi Chen felt that this was truly a great opportunity. By the way, I've prepared a big gift for you. I hope you'll like it. The Rabbit Saint waved her right hand, and the dense fog at the side dissipated. What appeared in front of them was a simple and unadorned palace. The palace's doors creaked open, and when Yi Chen saw what was inside the palace, her eyes narrowed involuntarily. So many supreme treasures and saint treasures. The palace was not very big, and it was filled with supreme treasures and sacred treasures. Intense lights interweaved together, shining thousands of times brighter than the sun. If it were not for the fact that the doors of the palace were closed, this light would not have been hidden by the fog. The things inside belong to the people who were killed over the past hundreds of millions of years. They are useless to us, so I'll give them to you. The Rabbit Saint said generously. Give them all to me? Yi Chen was a little stunned. Of course. In the Rabbit Saint's eyes, these things were nothing. Is there anything you need me to do, Senior? Yi Chen was a little flattered, to accept such a big gift for no reason. You have already helped us greatly. Without you, we would have to stay in the desolate god's secret realm for countless years. Compared to this, these things that are useless to us are nothing. In the end, Yi Chen accepted this big gift. Among this big gift, the most precious were the supreme treasures and the sacred sword, because only these 2 things could improve his immortal sword physique. Otherwise, he did not know how long it would take to improve his immortal sword physique to level 13 or 14. After Yi Chen put away all the supreme treasures and saint treasures in the palace, the Rabbit Saint had already created a map of the desolate god's secret realm. Here. The Rabbit Saint tossed the map to Yi Chen. All right, we're leaving. The Rabbit Saint glanced at the valley where the fog had dissipated, and a hint of reluctance appeared in her eyes. Although she had wanted to leave this place countless times, she was still a little reluctant to leave. Yi Chen, see you again. The Rabbit Saint crushed a token in her hand. In the next moment, endless desolate god laws and desolate god willpower came over, forming a cocoon of light that enveloped the 8 brothers. Whoosh, the cocoon of light broke through the void and disappeared without a trace. Thank you, Yi Chen thought to himself. After counting the supreme treasures and saint treasures, Yi Chen inhaled sharply again. This big gift from the Rabbit Saint was really too big. After counting, there were more than 3,000 saint treasures. There were sabers, spears, swords, staffs, armors, inner armors, and more than 90% of them were earth saint treasures. There were more than 3,000 of them, and there were only a dozen or so sky saint treasures. It was clear how rare sky saint treasures were. In hundreds of millions of years, there were only a dozen or so. There were even more supreme treasures, more than 10,000 of them. There was not a single level 1 supreme treasures among them, and all of them were level 3 and above. Of course, Yi Chen valued the supreme treasures and the sacred swords more. There were 820 supreme treasures and 311 sacred swords. Among them, there were 310 Earth Saint treasures and only 1 Sky Saint treasures. Moreover, it was not a 1-star Sky Saint treasure, but a 3-star Sky Saint treasure. It was more than 100 times stronger than the 9-star Earth Saint treasure Heaven Sword in his hand. Just by holding it in his hand, Yi Chen could feel the vast sword qi about to surge out and destroy everything in front of him. This sacred sword was called the Firmament Sword. This sword will be my trump card in the future. With the Firmament Sword, Yi Chen's strength would soar again. However, he still planned to use the Heaven Sword normally. After all, the Heaven Sword had been with him for a long time. With his current strength, he probably did not need the Firmament Sword. The Heaven Sword was enough. There were a total of 13 Sky Saint treasures. Other than the Firmament Sword, there were 8 offensive sacred treasures and 4 defensive sacred treasures. The best defensive sacred treasure was also a 3-star Sky Saint treasure called the Black Tortoise Sacred Armor. There was the Firmament Sword for his weapon and the Black Tortoise Sacred Armor for his armor. For the first time, Yi Chen had a feeling that it was unreal. These things came too easily. However, on the other hand, if someone else passed the test, they would also get this big gift. It was just that Yi Chen was luckier and became the first person to eat crabs. With so many supreme treasures, it should be enough to push my immortal sword body to the 14th level. Yi Chen was not in a hurry to leave the desolate god's secret territory. He planned to improve his immortal sword body. After all, although there was no one in the desolate god continent who could threaten him, there were still many unknown dangers in the desolate god's secret territory. He would not naively think that he was already invincible in the desolate god's secret territory. Not to mention other things, there were demigod-level beasts in the desolate god's secret territory, which were also sacred beasts. Chapter 1392. Every level of the immortal sword body was harder to reach. From the 10th to the 11th level, one needed to absorb the essence of one supreme sword. From the 11th to the 12th level, one needed to absorb the essence of 10 supreme sword. From the 12th to the 13th level, one needed to absorb the essence of at least 100 rank 1 or 2 supreme sword. If it wasn't for this great gift, Yi Chen wouldn't have been able to reach the 13th level, let alone the 14th. All the supreme swords I have here are rank 3 or above. I wonder how many sword essences I need to absorb to level up? Getting rid of distracting thoughts, Yi Chen started to cultivate the immortal sword body. Sky Splitter was guarding not far away. If any fierce beasts attacked, it would tear them apart at all costs. Clang! The ground was filled with supreme swords. When Yi Chen activated the immortal sword body, the 20 rank 3 supreme swords closest to Yi Chen started to tremble. In the next moment, 20 sword phantoms flew out and entered Yi Chen's body. Visible to the naked eye, Yi Chen's body had an additional sword pattern, increasing from 12 to 13 sword patterns. The 13th level is done. Yi Chen spat out a mouthful of sharp impure air. This was the impure air contained within the sword essences. The higher the level of the immortal sword body, the more demanding its appetite would be. What used to be a part of the essence might not be the essence anymore. The 13th level of the immortal sword body was enough to block an attack from a mid-level legendary sovereign, but it wasn't enough. As his strength increased by leaps and bounds, Yi Chen's sights were set higher and higher. The immortal sword body continued to operate, and one sword phantom after another entered Yi Chen's body. 50, 100, 200. After absorbing the essence of 200 rank 3 supreme swords, Yi Chen's immortal sword body reached the 14th level, and another sword pattern appeared on his body. What a powerful feeling! After reaching the 14th level of the immortal sword body, Yi Chen felt that his every move was filled with boundless power. It should be known that the physical strength of the majority of legendary supremes was already very good if they could withstand the attacks of super supremes, but Yi Chen could withstand the attacks of high-level legendary supremes even without the protection of a sacred artifact armor. Once his body's defense was strong, he would be able to wear down enemies who were on par with him to death. At any rate, even if the other party was wearing a sacred artifact armor, they would not be able to completely block off the attack. Otherwise, they would still receive some damage from the shockwaves. As time went on, they would be incapable of enduring it. Let's see what the limit is. Yi Chen was very clear that his immortal sword body couldn't be improved endlessly. He could only improve it now because he had a sufficient foundation. Once his foundation was exhausted, it would be useless no matter how many supreme treasured swords he had. He wouldn't be able to absorb them. 100. 200. Very quickly, the third-grade sovereign swords were all used up. What was left were fourth-grade and fifth-grade sovereign swords. There were fewer fifth-grade sovereign swords, only about 30 of them. After absorbing the essence of more than 200 rank 3 supreme swords and 300 rank 4 supreme swords, Yi Chen's body shook, and a new sword pattern appeared on Yi Chen's body. The 15th level of the Immortal Sword Body. When he created the Immortal Sword Body, he had never thought that he would have such an achievement today. At that time, he only wanted to create a sword body that could strengthen his defense. But who would have thought that he would accidentally create a strange sword body art like the Immortal Sword Body? Judging from the conditions, the Immortal Sword Body was obviously inferior to the 9 transformation golden body. After all, the conditions were too harsh. How could there be so many supreme sword essences for one to absorb? Moreover, the higher the level, the more terrifying the supreme sword essences would be. It was simply a fantasy. However, in the long run, the Immortal Sword Body surpassed the 9 transformation golden body by many levels. The 9 transformation golden body was the limit of the 9 transformation golden body, and it was extremely difficult to cultivate. In comparison, the Immortal Sword Body was much easier to cultivate. Of course, the prerequisite was that one had to have the Immortal Sword intent. Otherwise, it would be useless. The 15th level of the Immortal Sword Body was enough to resist a peak legendary supremacy's attack. Coupled with the Black Tortoise sacred armor, Yi Chen estimated that even a demigod wouldn't be able to hurt him. As for whether the weakest demigod could hurt him, Yi Chen wasn't sure. Up until now, he still didn't know how strong and terrifying a demigod was. Even so, Yi Chen was still very confident in the Immortal Sword Body. In his opinion, he still needed to be careful even if he was strong. If 2 enemies of similar strength surrounded him, he would have to escape. However, with such a strong defense, he wouldn't need to be afraid of 10 enemies of similar strength. He could just kill them until they were afraid. The 15th level is the limit. Next, Yi Chen planned to break through the Immortal Sword Body, but he failed. The 15th level was his limit unless the Immortal Sword intent could break through to the 9th level. Heaven Splitter, let's go back. Standing up, Yi Chen jumped onto Heaven Splitter's back and patted him. Hearing this, Heaven Splitter lowered his body. The next moment, his hind legs exerted force, and his huge body shot out like a sharp arrow. His speed was much faster than before. The desolate god's secret domain was extremely vast, and there were many treasures here. However, these treasures were usually guarded by fierce beasts. Before coming here, Yi Chen didn't have any extravagant hope. He only wanted to survive. But now that his strength had increased, he had many ideas. My origin is damaged, and my cultivation is less than 30% of my usual strength. I need to find some treasures to recover. His recovery was too slow, and Yi Chen didn't have that much time to waste on it. A few days later, Yi Chen found a small tree with 3 fist-sized fruits growing on it. They were red, yellow, and blue respectively. This was the famous legendary spirit fruit, the tricolored fruit. The red fruit could replenish the essence and blood, The yellow one could replenish the Zhen Yuan, and the blue one could replenish the soul. Together, they were the essence, qi, and spirit sources. The fierce beast guarding the tricolored fruit was no match for Heaven Splitter, so it was quickly chased away. After swallowing the 3 spirit fruits, Yi Chen felt that his origin had recovered to about 50%. His martial Dao Yuan spirit gradually brightened, no longer as dim as before. Fortunately, this was the desolate god continent, the desolate god secret domain. If it was in the outside world, a legendary spirit fruit like the tricolored fruit could only be found in book. Of course, it should also be found in the heavenly river. He wasn't in a hurry to leave the desolate god secret domain. Since more than 100 years had passed, he wasn't in a hurry to leave for another year or so. It was unknown whether Yi Chen's luck was good or bad, but when Yi Chen's origin had recovered to 70%, Yi Chen encountered the baboon fierce beast, Tifula. Roar. Without waiting for his master to make the first move, Heaven Splitter rushed forward. Now that he was a peak legendary fierce beast, he didn't fear Tifula like before. In a situation where the difference in strength wasn't too big, the Star Bear Dog King would never shy away from a battle. The 2 gigantic beasts tore at each other rapidly, their roars rising and falling like thunder. Woo-woo, it was obvious that Heaven Splitter wasn't Tifula's match. He was sent flying by the other party's claw, and blood splattered. After all, even the peak legendary fierce beast, the gold-eating beast, would tremble when it encountered Tifula. Heaven Splitter's strength seemed to be slightly weaker than the gold-eating beast. It only dared to fight because its master was backing it up. We meet again. Yi Chen's figure flashed and blocked Tifula, who was about to rush forward to tear Heaven Splitter apart. Tifula didn't take Yi Chen seriously at all and slapped him with its claw. Clang! The sound of metal clashing resounded. Yi Chen was unscathed, but the powerful force made him slide hundreds of meters away, leaving a deep mark on the ground. What a powerful force! Yi Chen was surprised. This Tifula wasn't an ordinary peak legendary fierce beast, but one of the top legendary fierce beasts in the history of the desolate god continent. Although the gold-eating beast was strong, it could only be ranked in the top 20 in the history of the desolate god continent. Compared to Tifula, it was a far cry. Take my destruction sword attack as well. Yi Chen jumped up and took out his heaven sword. The sword light stabbed out violently. Pooh! Tifula couldn't dodge in time, and blood appeared on its chest. Its defense had been pierced through by the destruction sword. Right now, Yi Chen didn't even have a clear idea of what level his power had reached. Not to mention other things, after more than 100 years, with the 3 peak rank 8 sword spirits resonating, his sword intent alone had increased by more than 100 times. Of course, this little wound was probably not much different from being stared at by a mosquito for Tifula. Tifula was furious, and his eyes were getting redder and redder. Before, when he fought with Sky Splitter and slapped Yi Chen, they were just casual attack. He didn't think that he needed to use his full power. The enraged Tiefula displayed all of his strength as he charged toward Yi Chen with a brutal aura. Yi Chen didn't dare to be careless. His green lotus sword realm suddenly exploded, covering Tifula. At the same time, Yi Chen performed his most powerful sword movement, the heavy sword movement, and slashed toward Tifula. Boom! Tifula and Yi Chen were blown away at the same time. No wonder it is one of the top legendary fierce beasts in the history of the desolate god continent. Yi Chen praised in his mind. He had already tried his best, but his power was only on par with Tifula's. Chapter 1393. Rumble. The battle was still going on. Within a radius of thousands of miles, sand and stones were flying everywhere. The man and the beast were moving at a very fast speed. From time to time, they would collide with each other. Every time they collided, it would be like an earthquake, and shock waves would radiate in all directions. After fighting for hundreds of rounds, Tifula let out a strange cry and suddenly spat out a bloody light from its mouth. This bloody light was its trump card, and it would not be used easily. For a peak legendary fierce beast with an extremely strong defense like the gold-eating beast, as long as it was sprayed by the bloody light, it would not be able to withstand it. Wherever it was sprayed, that place would be melted. The thick sword light flew towards the blood-red light. With a puff sound, half of the blood-red light was cut off, and the remaining half was still rushing towards Yi Chen. However, Yi Chen was already prepared for this. He used the third move of the 5 elements sword art, the defensive sword style. The sword light protected him completely. Although the blood-red light was ferocious, it was quickly weakened by the layers of sword light. Just as Yi Chen was about to launch a fierce counterattack, a beam of black and white light shot over from afar. This beam of light was extremely fast, as if it could pierce through the void. In an instant, it arrived in front of Yi Chen. At this moment, Yi Chen was in a situation where he had already used up all his previous strength but had yet to recover, so he had no time to dodge or resist. He was hit by the beam of black and white light, and his entire body was sent flying. Finally, he sank deep into a mountain. The ground trembled as a huge creature rushed over. It looked like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but it had 2 heads, a dragon's head and a snake's head. It was one of the most powerful legendary beasts in the history of the Wild's God continent, the Gemini Tyrannosaurus. Roar. Hiss. The 2 heads of the Gemini Tyrannosaurus produced different sounds. One was the roar of a dragon, while the other was the sound of a snake sticking out its tongue. One was hard, while the other was soft. It was extremely uncomfortable to listen to. Sky Splitter was a little restless. They were both pinnacle legendary fierce beasts, but it was still a far cry from Tifla's Gemini Tyrannosaurus. As a newly advanced pinnacle legendary fierce beast, it had some strength, but its foundation hadn't stabilized yet. It couldn't compare to Tifla's tyrannical ferocity, let alone the Gemini Tyrannosaurus aura. Boom! Rubble flew everywhere as Yi Chen dashed out from inside the mountain. Gemini Tyrannosaurus. Yi Chen noticed the Gemini Tyrannosaurus immediately. If it had been in the past, Yi Chen would have run as far as he could when he encountered Tifla and the Gemini Tyrannosaurus in the past. As for whether he could escape or not, that was another matter. However, the wheel of fortune changed. This time, he should not be the one running away. I advise you two not to provoke me. Yi Chen was unscathed as he spoke to Tifula and Gemini Tyrannosaurus. Roar. Roar. Hiss. Both of them were peerless vicious beasts, so how could they listen to Yi Chen's words? One on the left and one on the right, they charged at Yi Chen, as if they would not stop until they tore Yi Chen into 1,000 pieces. You asked for it. Sheathing the heavenly sword, Yi Chen took out a simple and unadorned long sword. Clang, as the sword was unsheathed, a vast and boundless sword chi swept out, and the high ground within a radius of several hundred miles was instantly cut down. Scram! As if swatting flies, Yi Chen swept his sword toward Tifula and the Gemini Tyrannosaurus. Blood splattered, and the 2 peerless legendary vicious beasts were sent flying. Under the 3-star divine weapon, the firmament sword, they were so powerful that they could not withstand a single blow. You two go, I don't want to kill you. Given some time, Yi Chen had the chance to kill the 2, but it was meaningless for him. Sky Splitter had already advanced to the peak of legendary vicious beast, and could not rely on devouring vicious beast flesh to evolve. Moreover, even if he wanted to devour vicious beast flesh, he would at least have to devour the flesh of quasi-holy beasts. With Yi Chen's strength, there was no way for him to challenge quasi-holy beasts. Of course, with the Xian Wu sacred armor and the firmament sword, Yi Chen was not afraid of ordinary quasi-holy beasts. Another 2 months passed, and Yi Chen found a rare origin grass. Not only did his martial path Yuan Shen recover to its original state, but it had also improved a lot. It had reached the peak of silver primary level and was only 1 step away from silver intermediate level. It's time to go out. More than 100 years had passed, and Yi Chen did not know what changes had happened to the Wild's God continent. In his opinion, Sea Fiend Empyrean was not a good person, so it was necessary to go back. In the center of the Wild's God continent, a giant city had appeared. The city walls were hundreds of meters tall, and were iron-black in color. Looking down, one could see that the entire city was divided into two parts, one left and one right. In the center of the left part was a black palace, and in the center of the right part was a silver-gray palace. The black palace was the Sea Fiend Palace, and the silver-gray palace was the Evil Light Palace. At a rough glance, there were at least 5 million families in the city. Based on the calculation of 3 people in each family, the city had a total population of 15 million, which was far more than the population of a rank 8 tribe. It should be known that a rank 8 tribe only had 200,000 to 500,000 families, which was less than 1.5 million people. In more than 100 years, Empyrean Sea Fiend and Empyrean Evil Light had joined forces to unify the entire Wild's God continent, creating the only 9th grade tribe, the Demon Light Tribe. The Demon Light Tribe was a combination of the two's titles, and 90% of the Demon Light Tribe's population came from the 13 8th grade tribes. As for the 7th grade tribes, they were directly ignored. They did not plan on gathering all the desolate race people in the Demon Light Tribe. It was fine as long as the 8th grade tribes fell under their control. Kong Siwei, what do you think? As long as you hand over the Redbud Flower battle armor, I can guarantee your daughter's safety. Sea Demon Palace, Empyrean Sea Fiend looked down at Kong Siwei. A trace of anger and disdain appeared on Kong Siwei's face. The mighty Empyrean Sea Fiend actually resorted to such underhanded methods. Don't you think it's shameless? Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. This is all your fault. If you don't reflect on yourself, I can't guarantee that nothing will happen to your daughter. Empyrean Sea Fiend was expressionless. Hearing this, Kong Siwei's face darkened. Among the 13 8th grade tribes, the first to join the Demon Light Tribe were the other 8 great 8th grade tribes. The Redbud Flower battle armor and the other 4 great tribes joined later. After all, if they didn't join, they would be attacked by the other side. Although the 5 of them could barely protect themselves, the others couldn't. This was something they had no other choice. Who knew that after joining the Demon Light Tribe, Empyrean Sea Fiend and Empyrean Evil Light would begin to think of ways to obtain the Heavenly Saint artifacts of the 5 great tribes. After a series of actions, besides Kong Siwei, the other 4's Heavenly Saint artifacts had all been taken away. Once they lost their Heavenly Saint artifacts, the 5 of them would be no match for Empyrean Sea Fiend and Empyrean Evil Light. Kong Siwei was the strongest among the 5 great tribe leaders. With the Redbud Flower battle armor, she was very domineering. She had always been unwilling to hand over the Redbud Flower battle armor. She knew very well that once she handed over the Redbud Flower battle armor, even Empyrean Sea Fiend and Empyrean Evil Light couldn't do anything to her. They simply couldn't hurt Kong Siwei through the Redbud Flower battle armor. After all, apart from their 9th domain, their strength was about the same as Kong Siwei's, or even slightly worse. Who would have thought that Empyrean Sea Fiend would secretly capture Kong Siwei's daughter, Kong Xueli, to threaten her? Chapter 1394. In just over 100 years, they actually managed to unify the desolate God continent and establish the only 9th level tribe, the Demon Light Tribe. And besides Empyrean Sea Demon, there is also another peak legend ranked supreme, Empyrean Nefarious Light. 10,000 miles away from the Demon Light Tribe, a young man riding a giant vicious beast was rushing over. After asking around, Yi Chun learned just what had happened in the desolate God continent in the last 100 years. With a sneer, Yi Chun looked towards the Demon Light Tribe, thinking, how ironic. The only 9th level tribe was actually destroyed by me. Something's wrong? Suddenly, Yi Chun seemed to think of something. Could it be that all of this was guided by the will of the desolate God? The desolate God continent was the world of the desolate race, and outsiders were ultimately outsiders. If one wanted to dominate the desolate God continent, It was impossible for there to be no consequences. Perhaps the will of the desolate god wanted to use him to destroy the only ninth-level tribe and return the desolate god continent to its original state. As for him being able to enter the mountain valley and accept the test, it might have been guided by the will of the desolate god. In short, the will of the desolate god covered the entire desolate god continent. It could affect the destiny of countless people. Before outsiders arrived, it would treat them all equally. But once outsiders arrived, it would favor the desolate race. What if I immediately change my mind and don't deal with Empyrean Sea Demon? Yi Chen couldn't help but think. It's best not to have such thoughts. A mortal cannot measure the will of a true god, nor do they need to measure it. The consequences are not something I can bear. Soon, Yi Chen dispelled this idea. He didn't want to challenge fate. Without absolute strength, wanting to defy the heavens would only result in him being abandoned by fate and becoming a pitiful worm. Soon, the demon light tribe appeared in front of him. Kong Siwei, my patience is limited. Before you leave Sea Demon Palace, you must make a decision. Do you want to hand it over or not? In truth, Empyrean Sea Demon didn't need the Bauhinia battle armor. With his current status, if he had enough time, he could create a second set of Heavenly Saint artifact armor. He just didn't want the Bauhinia battle armor to fall into the hands of others. What he needed was absolute control. Once he gave an order, no one would dare disobey. Kong Siwei was about to say something. Bang! With a loud explosion, the entire demon light tribe shook. Within the palace of Sea Demon Palace, dust began to fall down, filling the air. Who is it? Exalted Celestial Venerable Sea Demon was enraged. His figure flashed as he flew out of the Sea Demon Palace. At the same time, Evil Light Hall's Heavenly Sovereign Evil Light also came out. What happened? Kong Siwei followed him out with a puzzled expression. Kong Siwei. Above the Demon Light tribe, Ing Liexiong, Yun Piaomiao, and the other two gathered from 4 different directions. After the 4 of them had their Ascended Saint artifacts taken away, their status was not as good as before. Fortunately, they were very sensible and did not resist too much. Otherwise, they might not even be able to see them now. It seems like someone is attacking the Demon Light tribe's array formation outside, Kong Siwei said. Let's go out and take a look. The 5 of them were very curious, but at the same time, they also had a trace of hope. When the 5 of them arrived at the Demon Light tribe's gate, the entire gate was already crowded with people. As far as the eye could see, 10 miles away, a man and a beast were standing side by side. The beast was the king of the space bearhounds. The terrifying aura emitted from its body shocked everyone. This kind of aura was clearly the aura of a peak legendary beast. There was no mistake. Beside the king of the space bearhounds was a young man in blue clothes. He had 2 swords on his waist. His long black hair fluttered in the wind like ink. His eyes were like 2 beams of sword light, staring at Empyrean Heimo and Empyrean Xieguang. It's Yi Chen. Ing Liexiong was shocked. It really is him. Kong Siwei and the others also recognized this person. It's good that he didn't die, but why did he come back? A peak legend rank beast alone shouldn't be able to do anything to Empyrean Sea Demon and Empyrean Nefarious Light. Over 100 years had passed, and they all thought that Yi Chen had died long ago. They never imagined that not only had he returned unscathed, but the Star Bear King that had followed him had also evolved into a peak legend rank beast. Unfortunately, Empyrean Sea Demon and Empyrean Nefarious Light were simply too powerful. In truth, the 2 of them were about the same as the 5 of them, but their 9th layer domain was their trump card. Inside the 9th layer domain, the 5 of them couldn't even display 1% of their strength. Only Kong Siwei could resist. Yi Chen. Lan Yu, who had just arrived, cried with joy. Yi Chen's figure had already been engraved in her heart at some unknown time. The first demon commander and evil star had complicated expressions, especially the first demon commander. He longed to kill Yi Chen himself, but he didn't want others to do it for him. Yi Chen's return made him feel relieved, but at the same time, a premonition appeared in his heart. This premonition made him feel uneasy. Maybe I'm overthinking things, the first demon commander thought. Boy, you dare to come back? Empyrean Sea Demon was furious. Even the desolate god mystic domain couldn't stop this boy. In Empyrean Sea Demon's opinion, Yi Chen's life was simply unimaginable. Today is the day I return. Today will be the day you die. After fighting with the Tefla Gemini Tyrannosaurus, Yi Chen had a rough idea of his strength. When using the Sky Sword, his strength was about the same as Tefla's. He was a peak existence among the peak legend rank supremes, and above that would be the quasi-demigod rank. Once he used the Firmament Sword, his strength would undoubtedly reach the quasi-demigod rank. What a joke! Do you really think that you can rely on a mere pinnacle legendary ferocious beast? Empyrean Sea Demon sneered disdainfully. He didn't know what Yi Chen was relying on, but since the other party had delivered himself to his doorstep, he definitely wouldn't let him escape again. Empyrean Evilite, I will deal with this boy. You hold the line and don't give him a chance to escape. Yi Chen's space-time profound made Empyrean Sea Demon not 100% sure that he could stop him. However, with Empyrean Evilite by his side, even if the other party's space-time profound had reached perfection, he wouldn't be able to escape. No problem. Empyrean Evilite nodded. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Chen with a bit of pity. It wasn't a good thing for the demons to dominate the evil spirit race. However, this was the desolate god continent. Whether or not they could leave was still a problem. He wouldn't think too far into the future. If there was someone to blame, they could only blame themselves for coming to their doorstep and seeking death. There is a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There is no door to hell, but you insist on coming. Prepare to die. Empyrean Sea Demon shouted. A vast and mighty sea demon domain radiated outwards, instantly covering a radius of several hundred miles. Under the suppression of the sea demon domain, Skysplit felt a bit uncomfortable. His limbs trembled and he couldn't help but roar. Compared to the burning heat domain, it's too lacking. Yi Chen reached out and grabbed a strand of the sea demon domain's water domain, shaking his head. You should also experience my 9th layer sword domain. Bang! The void trembled. An incomparably massive 5-colored lotus bloomed with Yi Chen at the center. Empyrean Sea Demon's sea demon domain was vast and mighty, like an endless wave. But under the pressure of the 5-colored lotus, the sea demon domain was forced backwards, as if it had crashed into a giant ancient mountain, breaking apart and bleeding profusely. How is this possible? Everyone cried out in alarm. Empyrean Sea Demon was the most shocked. Then, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. His sea demon domain was actually not a match for Lin Ming's sword domain. This was simply a fantasy story. What he couldn't accept was that after being forced into the desolate god mystic realm, not only did Lin Ming not die, but his sword domain had also broken through to the 9th layer. Break for me. Empyrean Sea Demon's face flushed red. He pushed his sea demon domain to the limit, turning it into a monstrous wave that crashed into the 5-colored lotus. At their level, the first thing to compare was their domain. If their domain couldn't compare to their opponents, then their strength would be suppressed. Although he didn't think that Yi Chen was that strong, he didn't admit that his sea demon domain was inferior to his sword domain. A mantis blocking a chariot. Yi Chen sneered. The 5-colored lotus grew stronger and stronger, like an ancient lotus that grew in the chaos, turning everything into nourishment. As the monstrous waves rushed over, they were swatted back by the lotus leaves. The 5-colored lotus grew larger and larger, resisting the endless waves as it pressed down on Empyrean Sea Demon. A domain required energy to maintain. The Sea Demon Domain's energy was Empyrean Sea Demon's demonic power, while the Green Lotus Sword Domain's energy was Sword Essence, which was more suitable for the Green Lotus Sword Domain. If it weren't for Lin Ming's martial Dao Yuan spirit being strong enough and his demonic power strong enough, he would have long been crushed by the Green Lotus Sword Domain. The confrontation between the two domains left everyone dumbfounded, including the former leaders of the 5 tribes, Kong Siwei and the others. They were limited by the fact that their domains weren't strong enough. Otherwise, how could Empyrean Sea Demon and Empyrean Nefarious Light suppress them? Now, seeing Yi Chen's sword domain reach the 9th layer, and even surpassing Empyrean Sea Demon's Sea Demon domain, they couldn't help but sigh. Time was indeed the greatest change. After 100 years, a former genius had already surpassed them. Chapter 1395. Rumble. The Sea Demon domain was compressed to only a few hundred meters. The domain water was extremely turbid, and it was still roaring and struggling. Heavenly Venerable Evil Light, hurry up and help me. Heavenly Venerable Sea Demon shouted at Heavenly Venerable Evil Light. Without needing Heavenly Venerable Sea Demon's reminder, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light was already prepared to take action when he saw that the Sea Demon domain was about to be broken. With Heavenly Venerable Evil Light as the center, a thick gray light spread out. This gray light seemed to have a spirit. It was not in the shape of a bundle, but rather like a snake. The 9th domain, Evil Light Domain. Kid, it's not too late to surrender now. Evil Light Heavenly Venerable's killing intent was also aroused. Yi Chen was too powerful, and 2 powerful enemy geniuses had to be strangled ahead of time. Once the demonic race couldn't contend against the human race, the evil spirit race would be even more powerless. The 2 9th domains attacked Yi Chen's Green Lotus Sword domain from the left and right. But this way, the situation became strange. It seemed as if Yi Chen was accepting their challenge. Gradually, the 3 domains reached a balance, and no one could take another step forward. We are both at the early stage of the 9th domain. My Green Lotus Sword domain is stronger than the other party's domain, but it's still a bit difficult to fight 1 against 2. Raising his head, Yi Chen said in a clear voice, "You too, I wonder how my Green Lotus Sword domain is? So what if your domain is strong? Have a taste of my Sea Demon Towering Seal." Heavenly Venerable Sea Demon raised his right hand and slapped toward Yi Chen. The violent palm energy was like a flood, turning into a large seal along the way. It tore apart the 5-colored lotus and smashed toward Yi Chen. If it had been the Yi Chen of the past, he would have died if he had not avoided this palm. However, things were different now. Clang! Yi Chen pulled out the heavenly sword, and he slashed the large seal apart. With the Green Lotus Sword domain, the Sea Demon Towering Seal's power was not even 100%. Yi Chen could easily slash it apart. Impossible! How did your strength increase so much? Heavenly Venerable Sea Demon could not calm down anymore. It was one thing for Yi Chen's sword domain to be so powerful, but he was actually so powerful as well. This is all thanks to you. Speaking of which, I still have to thank you. However, these are 2 separate matters. I've said it before, my return today will be the day you die. In terms of cultivation realm, Yi Chen was naturally inferior to Empyrean Sea Fiend. Empyrean Sea Fiend's martial Dao Yuan spirit was at least mid-silver rank, or even high silver rank, while Yi Chen was only at peak early silver rank. However, in terms of heart power, Yi Chen far surpassed his opponent. Presently, Yi Chen's heart power had already reached the advanced stage, and coupled with his ceaselessly improving sword intent, it was sufficient to offset his opponent's advantage in cultivation and even surpass him. Don't you think it's too early for you to be arrogant? Empyrean Sea Devil had a gloomy expression. His hands were covered in a layer of black light and a powerful aura spread out from his hands. One could vaguely see that the black light was a pair of gloves. You should be proud of yourself for forcing me to use the power of a heavenly saint artifact. Watch as I break through your sword domain. It was the same Sea Devil monstrous seal, but this time, Empyrean Sea Devil's power was more than 100 times stronger. Previously, he had only used a portion of the Heavenly Saint artifact's power. That portion of power had already fused into his palms, and he had yet to refine most of the remaining power. Rumble! The void trembled as a black seal smashed into the 5-colored green lotus. Before the seal arrived, the 5-colored green lotus had already begun to fester, clearly unable to withstand the power of the Sea Devil monstrous seal. A Heavenly Saint artifact is indeed a Heavenly Saint artifact. Yi Chen sighed. Not only did a Heavenly Saint artifact possess vast power, but the characteristics it contained had also reached a new level. For example, if the Heavenly Sword evolved into a Heavenly Saint artifact, then the power of light would reach an even higher boundary. This level of power of light would not be much weaker than pure power. The other party's Heavenly Saint artifact gloves clearly contained the power of darkness. This was an existence completely different from the power of light, and it had the effect of melting everything. Of course, with the defensive power of the Black Tortoise sacred armor, Yi Chen could completely ignore the other party's attack. However, he didn't plan on exposing the Black Tortoise sacred armor. There was no need to use the Black Tortoise sacred armor to deal with the other party. The Heavenly Sword was sheathed and the Firmament Sword was unsheathed. Grasping the Firmament Sword, Yi Chen slashed out, and an incomparably thick sword light slashed towards the Black Seal. Pooh! The Black Seal collapsed, and the thick sword light instantly tore through the Sea Devil domain, shooting towards Empyrean Sea Devil. The probing had ended, and it was time to kill. Not good! Empyrean Evil Light was shocked. A curved saber appeared in his hand, and a gray saber light intercepted the thick sword light. Everything was out of his control. Not only was Yi Chen's strength powerful to an incredible degree, but he also had a Heaven Saint artifact in his hand. Originally, he had planned on watching the show and seeing how Empyrean Sea Devil would kill Yi Chen, but now that he was watching the show, Empyrean Sea Devil would die without a doubt. The other party's Heaven Saint artifact seemed to be more than just a 1-star Heaven Saint artifact. That sword technique was also extraordinary and had reached a very terrifying realm. Dang! The gray saber light was directly bounced off, but the thick sword light also deviated from its trajectory, brushing past half of Empyrean Sea Devil's body. Blood evaporated, and Empyrean Sea Devil lost a third of his body. The Earth Saint artifact armor on his body couldn't block this sword force at all. Ah! Empyrean Sea Devil screamed. Yi Chen's sword had even cut off a third of his martial arts Yuan spirit, leaving only 60 to 70% of his origin. Whether it was an Earth Saint artifact or a Heaven Saint artifact, when the enemy was directly injured, their origin would be damaged. For example, Earth Demon Venerable had once used the Bloodlust Spear to injure Golden Buddha Supreme's origin, causing him to spend hundreds of years to finally recover. Yin Yang Wuji. Since his sword didn't kill Empyrean Sea Devil, Yi Chen used the Yin Yang sword technique's third move, Yin Yang Wuji. In an instant, the fish-like black and white sword chi shot out, its speed even faster than the heavy sword technique. Those with poor eyesight couldn't even see the sword chi. Since Empyrean Sea Devil was injured, Empyrean Evil Light naturally wouldn't just stand by and watch. He used a saber technique to block the black and white sword chi, but a strange scene occurred. The black and white sword chi seemed to have a spiritual nature and continuously avoided his saber attack. Empyrean Evil Light was slightly careless, and the black and white sword chi flashed past and rushed towards Empyrean Sea Devil. Empyrean Sea Devil's injuries weren't light, but he still had combat strength. His palms wrapped in black light turned into phantoms that fought with the black and white sword chi. Evil Star, let's go! On the city wall, the first demon Venerable suddenly soared into the sky and flew into the distance, abandoning Empyrean Sea Devil and Empyrean Evil Light. First Demon Venerable, you Evil Star looked at the battlefield and then at the distant First Demon Venerable. He shook his head and turned to follow the first demon venerable. Before leaving, he stared at Yi Chen in shock. This was too terrifying. In just over 100 years, he had far surpassed everyone. No wonder the first demon venerable said that Empyrean Sea Devil had ruined his momentum. If Empyrean Sea Devil hadn't forced Yi Chen into a desperate situation, Yi Chen most likely wouldn't have such strength. Mortals really couldn't guess what was going on. The first demon venerable and evil star left so suddenly that no one could react. On the battlefield, Yi Chen secretly nodded. The other party had left very decisively. Otherwise, he wouldn't have minded dealing with Empyrean Sea Devil and Empyrean Evil Light after he dealt with them. But now there was no need to do so. He would kill Empyrean Sea Devil and Empyrean Evil Light first. Leaving them alive was a disaster. It's all over. Kong Siwei breathed a sigh of relief. That's right. It feels like a dream. Ing Liexiong and the others looked at each other and sighed. I told you there was nothing to worry about. History has proven that anyone from the outside who wants to unify the wilderness god continent will never have a good ending. The Battle Pagoda tribe's leader Tai Tan drank a mouthful of liquor and said indifferently, "Kill." The range of the Green Lotus sword domain shrank and superimposed with his protective sword energy. Yi Chen gripped the firmament sword and attacked Empyrean Sea Devil and Empyrean Evil Light. Empyrean Evil Light was shocked and slashed at Yi Chen several hundred times. Ding ding dang dang. A scene that made him want to die happened. The saber light landed on Yi Chen's body and was actually bounced off. Yi Chen wasn't injured at all. With a puff, the firmament sword flashed and Empyrean Evil Light's body was split into two. In close combat, an Earth Saint artifact armor absolutely couldn't block the destruction of a Heaven Saint artifact. Empyrean Evil Light was directly hit and even his martial path Yuan Shen was killed. Finally, Yi Chen stared at Empyrean Sea Devil, who was fighting like a cornered beast. I didn't expect that I, Empyrean Sea Devil, who has dominated the universe for so many years, would actually be killed by a junior. What a joke. But if you want me to die, you must pay the price. Explode. As he spoke, Empyrean Sea Devil's body crazily expanded. Boom. Empyrean Sea Devil's body was smashed to pieces. A destructive shock wave surged out, mixed with the heart force, will, profound mysteries, domain, and so on that Empyrean Sea Devil had erupted before his death. The power of this explosion far surpassed his peak, reaching the quasi-demigod level. Yi Chen's eyes were cold as he allowed the shock wave to hit his body, causing ripples to appear. Chapter 1396. After dealing with Heavenly Venerate Sea Fiend and Heavenly Venerate Evil Light, Yi Chen returned the Sky Saint artifacts that belonged to Ing Liexiong and the others and kept the rest for himself. The two were very wealthy. They had 2 Sky Saint artifacts, a pair of gloves, a scimitar, and dozens of Earth Saint artifacts, all of which were above 6 stars. In addition, the two had collected a shocking amount of divine stones. Heavenly Venerate Sea Fiend had collected a total of 32 divine stones, and Heavenly Venerate Evil Light had collected 28 divine stones. Who knew how much they had gained in the Wild's God continent? Unfortunately, every star of a Sky Saint artifact required not 1 divine stone but 10 divine stones, and the failure rate was very high. Yi Chen did not dare to experiment with the Firmament Sword and the Xuanwu Sacred Armor. If he failed, he would have nowhere to cry. With the death of Heavenly Venerate Sea Fiend and Heavenly Venerate Evil Light, the demonic light tribe naturally fell apart, and the Wild's God continent returned to its original order. After spending half a year, Yi Chen comprehended the word left by the demigod and finally pushed the time ultimacy to perfection. The difference between perfection and time ultimacy was really big. Before perfection, Yi Chen felt like he was walking in mud, taking 1 step at a time. Now that the time ultimacy was at perfection, Yi Chen felt like he had become a fish swimming freely in a calm river without any obstacles. People who lived in spacetime would naturally enjoy better treatment when their spacetime ultimacy was at perfection. This was what Yi Chen believed. With the time ultimacy at perfection, Yi Chen's spacetime sword art shone brightly again, and its power surpassed the 5 elements sword art. The third move, black hole, appeared and 9 black holes appeared. The other words are no longer useful to me. It's time to leave. The book of martial arts left by the demigod was very useful to Yi Chen in the past, but now it had little use. After all, it was already amazing for the things left by the demigod to have 1 or 2% of their essence. It was impossible for them to integrate all of their essence into the book of martial arts. Not to mention whether he could do it. Even if he could, he would probably be too lazy to do it because it was too troublesome. Some things could not be reflected by words alone, and this was not a complete inheritance. You're leaving. Lan Yu fell silent after learning that Yi Chen was leaving. Yi Chen nodded. It's been several hundred years since we entered the Wild's God continent. It's time to go back. All good things must come to an end. Yeah, hundreds of years have passed without us noticing. Lan Yu still remembered the first time she met Yi Chen. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of years had passed. The scene from back then seemed to flash before her eyes. Even when it was time to leave, Yi Chen didn't return to the Eternal Tribe. He knew that with Lan Yu there, the Eternal Tribe should be very safe. Without him, it would be impossible for the Eternal Tribe to become a rank 7 or even rank 8 tribe. Rather than provoking public anger, it was better to let the Eternal Tribe develop peacefully. Several hundred years. For a moment, Yi Chen was eager to return home. Outside the barrier of the desolate god's secret realm, the 5 tribe leaders, War Bear, Kong Xueli, and Lan Yu were all silently watching Yi Chen leave. What an unforgettable character! Everyone sighed inwardly. The man and beast flew to the edge of the barrier of the desolate god's secret realm. Turning around, Yi Chen cupped his fists and said, "Everyone, if fate wills it, we will meet again." Saying that, he stepped into the barrier of the desolate god's secret realm, and Sky Splitter followed closely behind. "Yi Chen, I will find you!" Right at this moment, Lan Yu suddenly shouted. Yi Chen's body paused slightly, and he entered the other side. "First Demon Sovereign, how are we going to leave?" In the sky, 2 figures were flying at high speed. They were the First Demon Sovereign and Evil Star. The First Demon Sovereign said indifferently, "We will return the way we came." "Then how did you get here?" Evil Star asked curiously. Although the desolate god continent is isolated from the rest of the world, it has its own destiny. Even the desolate god continent couldn't predict that a branch of the heavenly river would connect to the desolate god continent. Of course, it is extremely dangerous there. The desolate god's law and the heavenly river's law would clash from time to time. There is such a place? Evil Star sucked in a breath of cold air. The desolate god continent was created by the desolate god continent, and the heavenly river was the #1 scenery in the universe. Only the 2 would have a connection. After some thought, Evil Star realized that only the upper echelons of the demons knew about this, and they used this method to send the First Demon Sovereign in. "Sky Splitter, can you follow me back?" As they got closer to the ancient teleportation array, Yi Chen started to feel nervous. Sky Splitter was a beast of the desolate god continent, and it wasn't from the outside world. If he couldn't follow them out, Yi Chen would have to separate from them. This was something he didn't want to see. Roar. Sky Splitter let out a low roar. 3 months later, the man and beast arrived in front of an ancient teleportation array. It was a 6-pointed star teleportation array. It looked extremely old, as if it was made of simple stones. There was nothing special about it. "Let's go." Yi Chen and Sky Splitter walked into the teleportation array. Sword energy circulated, slowly pouring into the array. In the next moment, the shabby teleportation array lit up, emitting a light that could travel through space and time. Looking down, Yi Chen saw the universe. The man and beast seemed to be in a special space and time, in the gap between the desolate god continent and the universe. Swoosh. Then, the teleportation array flashed and disappeared. Yi Chen and Sky Splitter also disappeared from the desolate god's secret realm. In the blink of an eye, 2 years passed. The first demon sovereign and evil star arrived at the edge of the desolate god continent. From here, they could see the outside world. A white river flowed from the void, forming a boundary with the edge of the desolate god continent. The heavenly river's law and the desolate god continent's law collided, bursting with chaotic lightning. Not to mention going forward, just looking at it with the naked eye would make one tremble in fear. This chaotic lightning wasn't simple lightning. It was the destructive lightning produced by the collision of different laws, and it only existed in the primal chaos. They waited for 3 days. Now is the time. Follow me. With a swoosh, the first demon sovereign dashed out. Wait for me. Evil Star yelled out and hurriedly followed up. A few meters thick wave of the desolate god continent broke into the desolate god continent. Waves splashed everywhere, and the laws burst out, temporarily expelling the desolate god's law. It was indeed the safest time to go up. Once the desolate god's law recovered and collided with the heavenly river's law, the two wouldn't have a chance to enter the river. With a splash, the two jumped into the wave of the desolate god continent. However, the wave was still inside the desolate god continent. The moment the two jumped in, chaotic lightning surged outside, and the desolate god's law and the heavenly river's law collided again. The size of the wave of the desolate god continent was rapidly whittled away. Evil Star even felt that he and the desolate god continent were separated by only a finger's thickness of the desolate god continent. Swoosh! The wave of the desolate god continent retreated, merging into the desolate god continent tributary. That was close. Evil Star broke out in a cold sweat, fear lingering in his heart. Chapter 1397. In the starry sky, the most difficult thing to determine was one's position. Without a reference, one would have to take many wrong paths. After leaving the wilderness god continent, Yi Chen found himself and Heaven Splitter in an unfamiliar starry sky. The netherworld's sacred eye operated. Through space-time, Yi Chen saw the starry sky billions of light years away. Unfortunately, it was also an unfamiliar starry sky. Yi Chen couldn't use it to find the route back to the 4 major life star field. The starry sky wasn't boundless, but very few people could reach the edge of the cosmos. As a result, there were 2 theories. The first theory was that the starry sky was very, very big, and it was very difficult to reach the edge of the cosmos. The second theory was that the space-time at the edge of the cosmos was curved. You could clearly reach the edge of the cosmos, but you wouldn't know that you were there because you couldn't see the things outside the cosmos. Apart from that, even if you were heading in the right direction, you would never be able to leave the cosmos. Heaven Splitter, let's go. Left with no other choice, Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter could only choose a direction. Heaven Splitter's body had become incomparably huge. It was billions of miles in size, even bigger than the largest life star. Yi Chen's body had also returned to its normal height. He was 8 meters tall, 1 meter taller than the Golden Buddha Supreme. This was mainly due to the Immortal sword body, which could resist the attacks of peak legend rank Supremes. Heaven Splitter shrunk to 100 meters tall and 200 meters long. In other words, it was 30 meters tall and 70 to 80 meters long. Yi Chen sat on it. Heaven Splitter let out a loud roar that shook the entire starry sky. Then, it flew in the direction Yi Chen pointed out. Heaven Splitter's speed couldn't be described as chasing the stars and chasing the moon. Sitting on Heaven Splitter's back, Yi Chen could see dead galaxies passing by. When passing by a galaxy shrouded in dark mist, Yi Chen suddenly patted Heaven Splitter's head. Sky Splitter stopped precisely, its front claws gently scratching at the void, creating cracks in the void. What a surging darkness aura! A trace of surprise appeared on Yi Chen's face. Galaxies were generally not small, with a diameter of at least a few thousand light-years, and the bigger ones could even have a diameter of several 100,000 light-years. This dark fog was able to isolate the senses, and Yi Chen's netherworld saint eye could only penetrate 1 light-year before it was unable to penetrate any further, and was unable to clearly see what was inside the galaxy. Could it be a secret realm? Yi Chen frowned. Let's go in and take a look. Yi Chen was not afraid of any dangers in the galaxy. Other than demigods, he was confident that he could escape unscathed from anyone. Riding Sky Splitter, Yi Chen charged into the foggy nameless galaxy. Woo woo woo, the dark mist in the galaxy was extremely dense, and it constantly changed shape as if there were billions of demons hidden within. It caused one's heart to be filled with traces of fear and hallucinations. Stretching out his hand, a large amount of dark mist gathered in Yi Chen's hand, finally shrinking into a ball of darkness. After carefully sensing it, Yi Chen muttered to himself, "The universe is truly vast. I've never seen such an aura before." As he continued forward, the dark mist became denser, and the range of Yi Chen's netherworld saint eye was only 100 billion li. There's someone fighting. Through the netherworld saint eye, Yi Chen saw that a figure was fighting with countless black shadows tens of billion li away. Looking closely, this figure was the barbarian race's female sovereign, Supreme Seven Moons. Her enemies were black monsters that looked like bats, and their numbers were staggering. With a sweep of the netherworld saint eye, there were at least tens of thousands of them, and new black monsters would join in from time to time. Yi Chen waved his hand and space-time distorted. When he reappeared, he was already near Supreme Seven Moons. Sensing the space-time ripple, Supreme Seven Moons looked back and was stunned. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Supreme Yi!" She had seen Yi Chen before when Supreme Langya held a gathering. However, she heard that Yi Chen had disappeared for hundreds of years. She didn't expect to see him here today. Supreme Seven Moons, long time no see. What are these things? Yi Chen smiled. These are dark beasts, blood-sucking beasts. These things are very annoying. Unless they are completely annihilated, they will use the dark mist to revive infinitely. At first, there were more than 100,000 of them, but after 3 days and 3 nights of killing, there are still so many left. Fortunately, you came. After killing for 3 days and 3 nights, Supreme Seven Moons was already very tired. She didn't doubt that without Yi Chen, she wouldn't have been able to leave this dark star system. Who knew how many more blood-sucking beasts would be chasing after them? Most of the blood-sucking beasts had the strength of an 8th heaven sovereign, and some of the leaders had the strength of an ordinary sovereign. No wonder Supreme Seven Moons was so tired, Yi Chen thought. Too lazy to use martial arts, Yi Chen released the green lotus sword domain. Suddenly, a 5-colored lotus appeared, covering tens of thousands of blood-sucking beasts. In the next moment, these blood-sucking beasts collapsed. Supreme Seven Moons was stunned. Tens of thousands of blood-sucking beasts were dealt with by a sword domain? Supreme Yi, what's your strength now? Supreme Seven Moons asked curiously. Yi Chen didn't hide it. I was lucky to become a legendary sovereign. Legendary sovereign? Supreme Seven Moons thought she was hearing things. Yi Chen was only 1,000 years old, but he had become a legendary sovereign. Are you telling the truth? Supreme Seven Moons didn't believe it. What's the point of lying to you? Yi Chen smiled. It was normal for Supreme Seven Moons to doubt him. If he hadn't entered the wilderness god continent, he wouldn't have his current strength. It was already very good for him to become a peak super sovereign. After all, sovereigns lived for more than 100,000 years. How could they improve so quickly? As expected of Supreme Yi. I've learned a lot. After a while, Supreme Seven Moons finally accepted the fact that Yi Chen was a legendary sovereign. Many things must have happened in the universe over the past few centuries. It was Yi Chen's luck that he met Supreme Seven Moons. Otherwise, he didn't know how long it would take him to find a way back to the 4 major life star systems. Supreme Seven Moons sighed. In the few centuries you disappeared, the humans' black wind stream and the demons' Mora death prison opened. All the sovereigns locked in there escaped, and some legendary sovereigns appeared. Now, the highest commander of the Demons' Alliance is Demon Sage Garo, and the highest commander of our human alliance is Sword Sage White Pole. They're both demigods with earth-shattering strength. I felt that my strength was too low, so I came out to look for opportunities. Demigod? Yi Chen was shocked. He didn't expect such a big thing to happen in the past few centuries. He thought that he was strong enough. Fortunately, the human race has won. Yi Chen didn't have the confidence to fight against a demigod. Even with the Black Tortoise divine armor and the 15th level of the Immortal sword body, he probably wouldn't be able to block a demigod's attack. By the way, I heard that a legendary sovereign of the human race is going to marry a good friend of yours next year. Her name is Yan Qingxian. She's a new sovereign. Supreme Seven Moons suddenly mentioned something related to Yi Chen. Oh, there's such a thing? Yi Chen's expression turned cold, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Supreme Yi, don't be impulsive. I believe that with your strength and status, as long as you go back, he'll give you some face. There's no need to have a conflict. Supreme Seven Moons could feel the cold air coming from Yi Chen's body, so she couldn't help but remind him. In her opinion, Yi Chen was just an ordinary legendary sovereign. He couldn't fight against those old legendary sovereigns, so it wasn't a good thing to have a conflict. Chapter 1398. The number of blood-sucking beasts in the dark galaxy was much more than he had imagined. Every time they appeared, they would be densely packed. The highest number was 500,000. Not to mention the fact that Seven Moon Sovereign was only a peak powerful supreme being. Even if she were a super supreme being, she wouldn't be able to withstand the continuous attacks of 500,000 blood-sucking beasts. After all, there were also supreme-level beasts among the blood-sucking beasts. Normally, there would be one with the strength of an ordinary supreme being among 1,000 blood-sucking beasts. Of course, when one's power reached a certain level, there would be no danger. No matter how many blood-sucking beasts there were, they would just be food for Yi Chen. Sweeping through everything in their way, Yi Chen and Supreme Seven Moons rushed out of the dark galaxy. This place is about 20 years away from the barbarian territory and the 4 major life star regions. I'm afraid you won't be able to make it back in time. No matter how fast Yi Chen was, he would only be a few times faster than her. He wouldn't be able to make it back in time next year. Seven Moons had to remind Yi Chen. It's fine. I'll know once I try. Ever since his space-time lore reached completion, Yi Chen had never traveled at full speed. After all, he wasn't in a hurry before. Traveling at full speed consumed a lot of sword energy. He invited Seven Moons to sit on Sky Splitter's back. Yi Chen waved his hand, and an invisible space-time power covered Sky Splitter. The next moment, the two of them became transparent. It was as if they were one with space-time. As for their speed, they traveled through endless space-time in the blink of an eye. Seven Moon's eyes widened. It was too fast. She couldn't see her surroundings at all. Every time she focused, she was already in another place. He can't be planning to make it back to the 4 major life star regions in a year, right? Seven Moons was uncertain. She didn't know how fast they were, so she couldn't judge. White Tiger Star Region. Blue Sea Star, a level 9 life star. Supreme Skyhook was in a good mood. In a month, he would marry the new Supreme, Yan Qingxian. Everything went so smoothly because his power had completely recovered. True Martial Supreme, who had a divine item, couldn't compete with him and was defeated in a few moves. As for Yan Qingxian herself, she had been adamantly against it at first, which made him very angry. However, there was nothing he could do. After all, she was a supreme, and he could not force her openly. Otherwise, it would incur the wrath of the masses, and it would be hard to explain to the White Pole Sword Saint when he came out of seclusion. Although he was a legendary supreme, The White Pole Sword Saint would not kill him because of this matter, but he would definitely be imprisoned. Fortunately, there was always a way. He thought of a way. He had cultivated a secret technique that could affect people's subconscious. With his power as a legendary supreme, it was easy for him to brand the secret technique in Yan Qingshuan's Sea of Soul. As time passed, the secret technique's influence grew. 30 years ago, Yan Qingxian finally agreed, but she said that she would marry her after she came out. For Supreme Sky Hook, 30 years wasn't a long time, so he naturally agreed. Humph, that genius named Yi Chen disappeared for hundreds of years. Who knows if he's dead or not? Even if he's alive, when he comes back, Yan Qingxian will be my wife. No one has the right to say anything. White Pole Sword Saint might be dissatisfied, but I didn't force her. She agreed herself. I believe that White Pole Sword Saint won't have too much of a reaction for the big picture. After all, I'm a legendary supreme. Supreme Sky Hook was secretly proud of himself. Elder, Supreme True Marshal is here to see you. At this moment, a guard's voice came from outside the palace. Paragon Skyhook had many descendants in the 4 major life star regions, and they had formed families and sections. Now, all of these forces had gathered and lived on the Blue Sea Star. There were hundreds of millions of members, and they recognized him as their ancestor. It was like they had returned to their roots. Invite him in. Supreme Sky Hook frowned. This Supreme True Marshal was really annoying. He had been visiting more and more frequently. After a while, Supreme True Marshal entered the palace. True Marshal, why are you here again? Supreme Sky Hook shouted. Supreme True Marshal frowned and looked at Supreme Sky Hook. Supreme Sky Hook, I hope you will think twice and think about the big picture. What do you mean by think thrice before you act? What do you mean the big picture? Supreme Sky Hook didn't give Supreme True Marshal any face and scolded him. Supreme True Marshal's face turned green. I don't know what you did to make her agree, but you clearly know that her friend is a peerless genius of the human race. Are you going to destroy the peace of the human race for your own selfish desires? Sword Saint Bai Ji will punish you when he comes out. Supreme Sky Hook sneered. First, you have to know that I didn't force her. Second, this has nothing to do with you. Plus, I'm a legendary supreme. Even if I have to think about the big picture, the other party has to think about the big picture. Do you think that a superior will think about the big picture because of a subordinate? What big picture? This was something that could only be used to scare the newbies. To him, he was the big picture. Since when did he have to think about the big picture? What a joke. Every time they talked, they parted on bad terms. This time was no exception. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The day of Supreme Sky Hook and Yan Qingshuan's wedding had arrived. The blue diamond island of Blue Sea Star was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. The wedding of a supreme was different from an ordinary wedding. The extravagance was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Tens of thousands of red lanterns were everywhere, and each one was not an ordinary one. The wick was taken from the most precious part of the eternal lantern fish. Once lit, one would feel relaxed and happy, no matter how many worries one had, they would vanish like smoke in thin air. The red carpet on the ground was made from the fur of fierce beasts, extending far and wide. The dishes, wine, and fruits of the banquet were all extremely precious. Even eighth-layer life and death heavenly kings couldn't eat them. Supreme Sky Hook was a legendary sovereign, so practically all the sovereigns had come to attend the wedding, including several legendary sovereigns of the same status as him and some other miscellaneous characters. The entire Blue Diamond Island had tens of thousands of guests, divided into different regions. The deeper one went, the more distinguished one's status became. Those with lower status could only sit outside and enjoy the wedding wine. 9 Suns' heavenly sovereign has arrived. An endless stream of people arrived. Suddenly, a voice rang out, and everyone couldn't help but look over. Not far away, a majestic middle-aged man walked over with a majestic gait. He was 25 meters tall, and he was another legendary sovereign of the human race, 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign. Haha, Supreme Skyhook, congratulations! 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign cupped his fist. 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign, we've been waiting for you. Supreme Skyhook promptly went up to greet him. Among the current legendary sovereigns of the Human Alliance, 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign was without a doubt the strongest. He was a peak legendary sovereign, and his relationship with 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign had always been pretty good. This is just a small token of my appreciation. 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign came with a congratulatory gift, which was delivered by someone beside him. You're too polite. Supreme Skyhook's face was flushed. Chapter 1399. The 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign is here too. Now, all the legendary Supremes are here except for the Barbarian tribe. The Human Alliance currently had 6 legendary Supremes, one more than the Demons Alliance. However, the Human Alliance did not have the upper hand in the first battle. Instead, they were at a disadvantage. The main reason was that the legendary Supremes of the Demons Alliance were all expert. They had 2 peak legendary Supremes, while the Human Alliance only had 1 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign. 1 peak legendary Supremes was equivalent to several high-level legendary Supremes. 1 more legendary Supremes could not make up for the difference. It seems that the 9 Suns Heavenly Sovereign and Supreme Skyhook have a good relationship. Even if Supreme Yi returns, he probably won't be able to affect Supreme Skyhook. Sigh, what can we do? Only the White Pole Sword Sage can punish Supreme Skyhook in the entire Human Alliance. I don't think the White Pole Sword Sage will punish Supreme Skyhook severely because of this matter. After all, Supreme Skyhook is a legendary Supremes. His role is irreplaceable. Supreme Skyhook is very cautious. He chose to hold the wedding when the White Pole Sword Sage is in seclusion. He acted first and reported later. Those who came to the wedding naturally did not support Supreme Skyhook. It was only because of the situation. After all, if they did not come, it would be obvious that they looked down on Supreme Skyhook. For a moment, everyone was discussing in private. Of course, everyone was communicating through the soul. Unless Supreme Skyhook deliberately targeted them, no one would be able to hear it. Outside the Cerulean Sea Star, a figure passed through the atmosphere and flew towards the Blue Diamond Island. It was the white-haired Duguju who carried a long saber on his back. Now, his aura was extremely powerful, no weaker than that of the 7 Moons Supremes. He had obviously reached the level of a peak legendary Supremes. Soon, Duguju appeared above the Blue Diamond Island. Supreme Skyhook, I advise you to cancel this wedding. Whether it was because of his friendship with Yi Chun and Yen Qinxian, or because they both came from Elysium, Duguju wanted to stop this wedding. Little guy, do you know who you are talking to? Get down here. Paragon Skyhook's face darkened. Today was his wedding day, but someone dared to be so blind. He waved his hand, and Duguju fell to the ground as if he was struck by lightning. Compared to a legendary paragon, Duguju was too weak. At the side, the 9 Sun Heavenly Venerate shook his head. What was wrong with geniuses nowadays? Just because they had a bit of talent, they thought they could do whatever they wanted. Didn't they know that this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak? No matter how talented they were, it would take at least tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years for them to become a legendary paragon. During this period of time, the weak had to have the awareness of the weak. Many Supremes also shook their heads inwardly. It was too impulsive to cause trouble at a legendary supremacy's wedding. They were considering if they should distance themselves from Duguju. Supremacy Skyhook wasn't a good person. Although offending him wouldn't result in death, it wouldn't be good for them. Those who were close to him would most likely be implicated. Duguju, don't be impulsive. This isn't the place for you to cause trouble. We have to endure against a legendary paragon. We'll talk about it when we're strong enough. A supremacy who was on good terms with Dugu Ju secretly transmitted a message to Dugu Ju. Suddenly, his expression changed. Paragon Skyhook had inadvertently glanced at him and seemed to have eavesdropped on his conversation. Paragon Skyhook's face instantly turned pale. "Humph!" Supreme Skyhook snorted coldly. The formless sound wave made the supremacy even paler. He didn't dare to raise his head again. "You're called Dugu Ju, right? If you leave now, you still have a chance to get my forgiveness. Otherwise, don't blame me for embarrassing you." Supreme Skyhook didn't care about Dugu Ju at all. A legendary paragon is just a shameless scoundrel. Wait for Supreme Ye's return if you dare. For some reason, whenever he was in trouble, Dugu Ju would always think of Yi Chen. Even though he was helping Yi Chen and Yan Qingxian this time, he also thought of Yi Chen. As long as Yi Chen was there, anything could be solved. Dugu Ju smiled bitterly in his heart. Looks like I won't be able to get rid of his influence in this lifetime. Fine, you're the red flower and I'll be the green leaf. How dare you? Supreme Skyhook was enraged. He waved his hand, and a hook shadow with chains shot out and hooked onto Dugu Ju's body. Clatter, clatter. Supreme Skyhook directly hung Dugu Ju up. Blood flowed along the chains. If you weren't a supremacy of the human race, I would have ground your bones to dust. Supreme Skyhook gritted his teeth and said sinisterly, "Supreme Skyhook, what are you trying to do?" Outside the atmosphere, two more figures flew over. They were Supreme True Martial and Supreme Golden Buddha. They still thought that Supreme Skyhook was playing with fire. Yi Chen's progress was unimaginable. Once he returned after disappearing for hundreds of years, he might be able to turn the world upside down. Of course, there was another reason why they were biased towards Yi Chen. These supremacies imprisoned in the Moro Death Prison were all ancient supremacies. They weren't from the same generation as them, so they didn't take them seriously. In the entire Human Race Alliance, the supremacies were divided into two groups. One group was made up of ancient supremacies, and the other was made up of supremacies that were born in the recent hundreds of thousands of years. Supreme True Martial and Supreme Golden Buddha were naturally closer to the supremacies that were born a few 100,000 years ago. Supreme True Martial and Supreme Golden Buddha were naturally closer to the supremacies that were born a few 100,000 years ago. As for Sword Saint White Pole, he was of a higher level and wouldn't be biased towards anyone. In fact, not only the Human Race Alliance, but the Demons Alliance was also facing the same situation. Although the Human Race Alliance and the Demons Alliance were at war, everyone knew that no one could do anything to the other within a short period of time. It wasn't a moment of life and death yet, so there was naturally less disharmony between the two sides. Supreme Golden Buddha was 23 meters tall and his body was shining with golden light. He wasn't any shorter than Supreme Skyhook. He slapped at the chain, trying to break it. Supreme True Martial also attacked the chain with the True Martial Divine Mace. "Do you really think I won't dare to do anything to you?" Supreme Skyhook was completely enraged after being provoked again and again at his own wedding. Countless hook shadows shot out from his body and swept towards Supreme True Martial and Supreme Golden Buddha. Clang, clang, clang. Supreme Golden Buddha flew back with a pale face. He could take the attack of a mid-level legendary supremacy, but Supreme Skyhook was a high-level legendary supremacy. He couldn't take it. Supreme True Martial was the same. In fact, he was in an even worse state than Supreme Golden Buddha. In terms of defense, he wasn't as good as Supreme Golden Buddha even with his divine armor. He could only use the True Martial Divine Mace. "Get down here!" More hook shadows shot out. Supreme Skyhook wanted to take down Supreme True Martial and Supreme Golden Buddha. He wanted to let everyone know that their era of power was over and that his authority as a legendary supremacy was inviolable. Suddenly, a transparent wave burst out. Two people and one beast appeared in the sky. One of them was a young man in a blue robe. He swung his hand and the hook's shadows were cut into pieces. Supreme Skyhook, your good days are over.